Piece! Well, this shouldn't take that long. Right? Well, anyways, to start off this rather short series called One Piece, we got this one barrel in the water, on which some pirates pull it up, believing it's some booze. However, just as they pull the barrel up, their ship gets attacked by the Alvida pirates, led by the pirate Alvida, obviously. And on her ship, she has this one character named Kobe, who's a relevant character, but not at the same time. The Alvida pirates then proceed to invade the ship they attacked, on which Kobe happens to find the barrel mentioned earlier, which spawns our main character, Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy then gives a speech to Kobe, telling him how he's gonna become the king of the pirates, which honestly, you know what? I kinda believe him. And with seeing Luffy's ambition, this gives Kobe the courage to rebel against Alvida, who's holding him against his own will as her little chore boy. Here's when Alvida pulls up on Luffy, challenging him, also asking him about the whereabouts of the pirate hunter Zoro, which I don't think he knows anything about. Here's when Kobe then decides it's his time to shine, giving Alvida a piece of his mind, telling her that he'll one day become a marine and arrest her. But Luffy is like, fuck all that, and proceeds to clap her with his iconic Gum Gum no Pistoru, or Gum Gum no Pistol for those non-weebs. And you see, the reason why Luffy has this superhuman ability is through the consumption of a devil fruit, which if you don't know what a devil fruit is, there's pretty much a variety of these uncommon fruits in the One Piece world, which grants the consumer a very specific power at the cost of losing their motor skills in water. And the fruit that Luffy happened to consume is called the Gum Gum fruit, which gives his body rubber-like properties. But now going back to the story, oh my god, we got the Marines pulling up, but with simple maneuvers, Luffy escapes with Kobe, and as they're dropping by, there's an orange-haired girl that happens to be in the background, and who knows if she's an important character. But of course, Luffy and Kobe sail off without even batting an eye, because we don't need a female main character just yet. And so moving forward, on the little ship ride, Luffy goes over his goals in life, talking about getting this one treasure called the One Piece. And wait a sec. Isn't that the title of the anime? Oh my god! But as Luffy talks about getting the One Piece and searching the Grand Line for it, the subject of recruiting crewmates pops up, and the first person that comes to mind is Zoro, as previously mentioned by Alvida earlier. And after asking Kobe about his probable whereabouts, Kobe tells him that Zoro is being held at a marine base, and that is very scary. But with Kobe's guidance, they then fast travel all the way to Shellstown, where the marine base is located, and upon their arrival, they look over the gate and see Zoro and this one girl giving him jelly donuts. But unfortunately, she couldn't deliver them, because we got some marines coming in with nothing but disrespect, and even yeeting the girl out of the gate, on which Luffy catches her. Afterwards, Luffy then heads in himself to recruit Zoro to his pirate crew, as that is indeed the first step to become the king of pirates. But Zoro says, yo, I kinda got my swords confiscated. And so after searching the Marines base, Luffy locates Zoro's swords, but as he's retrieving them, oh no, it seems like Zoro and Kobe are about to get clapped here. But oh, would you look at that, we got Luffy coming in for the save, and freeing Zoro from the custody of the Marines. The Marine Captain Morgan then arrives, and ends up fighting Luffy, and while Luffy is handling Morgan, Morgan's son Helmapo, what kind of fucking name is that, holds Kobe hostage, which causes Luffy to switch targets, and simply claps him, because that's exactly what you do when someone's being held hostage. And with Luffy handling Helmapo, Zoro then decides to do some work and claps the big daddy threat Morgan, which actually brings Zoro to Morgan's subordinates because he was a rather terrifying tyrant. And here we cut to Nami, the orange hair girl, doing some looting in the marine base, where she ends up finding out that this one pirate named Buggy took a map that she was looking for, which is a map of the Grand Line. Moving forward, Luffy and Zoro are left off the hook by the Marines, and Zoro says, fuck it, I'll join your crew, while having some nice slice of life in this restaurant, where we get some insight about the legendary pirate, Goldie Roger, who practically accomplished everything there is to being a pirate, accumulating a world record bounty, and just before his death, he announced to the world that he left the almighty One Piece treasure at the Grand Line, which pretty much made the whole place a war zone for pirates. Afterwards, we are then rudely interrupted by some Marines, thanking Luffy and Zoro for defeating Morgan. However, with them being pirates, they politely kick them out of Shellstown. And so Luffy and Zoro take their things and go, leaving Kobe behind because he has other plans, which is to join the Marines, on which he gets recruited immediately. And so as Luffy and Zoro sail off, they say their goodbyes to Kobe and the Marines, and wow, I don't know where we're going next. But on their ship ride to their next destination, Luffy and Zoro exchange backstories with each other, with Zoro telling Luffy that he's searching the seas for a certain man, and had no other choice but to target pirate ships to make a living, which inadvertently gave him the reputation of being a bounty hunter. And Luffy tells his backstory on how he made a promise to a man named Shanks a long while back to become the king of pirates, slapping us with a juicy backstory flashback of Luffy's childhood with Shanks, where we get to see the lore of Luffy snacking on the Gum Gum fruit, gaining his very iconic ability by accident. And moving forward in the flashback, we then have Luffy getting bullied by some thugs, where Shanks pulls up on them and flexes his power level on them real quick, and while Shanks is distracted with handling them, Luffy ends up getting taken to the middle of the sea and yeeted into the water. And with him consuming a devil fruit, I don't think our main character is gonna make it out of this alive! But shortly after throwing Luffy into the water, the silly little thug gets instant karma and gets consumed by this rather large sea creature, which soon after heads towards Luffy. But here's where Shanks comes in for the save by simply staring into the creature's soul, but minus one arm. Moving forward past that, Shanks and his crew are preparing to depart, and just as he's leaving, Luffy tells him, yo, I'm gonna surpass you one day and become the king of the pirates! On which Shanks responds to that like, ain't that so? Giving Luffy his straw hat, intending that Luffy returns this hat to him one day after achieving his endgame goal of becoming the king of the pirates. And god, I said that so many times already. Cutting back to the present, we got starving Luffy over here, seeing seeing a bird in the sky, and so he tries to catch it for food. However, his capture attempt fails, and he is then taken by it, on which Zoro tries to go after him, and in the process encounters some pirates a part of the Buggy Pirates, stranded in the middle of the sea. Which, if you're wondering how they ended up here, they happened to get tricked by that mysterious orange-haired girl from earlier, and got their whole ship yoinked by her, which actually had the map of the Grand Line on it. And so with Zoro being a nice guy, he picks them up and heads in the direction that the bird took Luffy. Moving forward, as Luffy is being dragged through the sky by this bird, Buggy spots it in the sky and orders his men to shoot it down. With the bird getting shot, this causes Luffy to plummet all the way down to the ground, landing in between the orange-haired girl and some Buggy Pirates who were chasing after her. And somehow he took no fall damage in the process. Here's where the Buggy Pirates act hostile towards him, which was a rather silly mistake for them because Luffy simply claps them with ease. The orange-haired girl, impressed with Luffy's power, introduces herself as Nami, and what? Her name was Nami this whole entire time? And Nami then requests that they team up, on which Luffy is like, nah, I'm good, walking off and shortly collapsing afterwards from hunger. Nami then offers to buy him a meal to take advantage of this opportunity, and Luffy's like, I bet. Meanwhile, over at Buggy's corner, he is quite the salty fella right now, due to the fact that his men were unable to capture Nami, who stole their map. But anyways, now cutting back to our main characters, while Luffy and Nami are having a nice conversation, we learn about Nami's goals to get that bread, with the ultimate goal to accumulate 100 million berries, which is the currency in the series, by the way. She then pulls out the map that she stole from Buggy, elaborating that she's planning on using it to widen her opportunities to achieve this goal. And in the process, Luffy learns that she's a skilled navigator, which is kind of something that's important when you sail the seas. Luffy then takes back what he said earlier and invites her to join his pirate crew. However, she swiftly declines because apparently Nami hates pirates, and is the reason why she only steals from them specifically. So in a way, it's ethical stealing, right? Luffy over here not giving a care in the world is like, yo, this bread fucking slaps! Which as Luffy is enjoying his meal, Nami looks out the window and sees that the Buggy Pirates are still searching for her, on which she then tries to negotiate with Luffy, telling him if he cooperates and head to the Buggy Pirates with her, she'll consider joining his crew, and in the process ties him up. Luffy's like, nothing sus about this, it falls through, and upon being brought to Buggy, Nami turns him in, rimming him as her boss, and returning the map to Buggy to gain his trust. And it seems her little scheme here works, because Buggy accepts her into his crew, locking Luffy up in this cage, ordering Nami to light the cannon to shoot him with one of his balls, as a nice little loyalty test. And all she gotta do is light the cannon. How hard can it be? However, with her taking too long, one of the other Buggy Pirates grab the matches, on which Nami breaks her facade and knocks him out, but somehow in the process the cannon still gets lit, which using her bare hands, she puts out the cannon's fuse, which I think that kinda hurt. But with Nami resisting Buggy's orders, he then sends out his minions to take care of her. And just as it looks like she's about to get rolled here, Zoro comes in shonen fashion for the save. Buggy himself then pulls up on Zoro like, yo, let me take you out so I can increase my clout real quick, because you know, with Zoro being a well-known bounty hunter and all, on which we then have a very epic battle between them, where Zoro manages to slice him up a bit, but oh shit, it seems Zoro takes one to the torso. And apparently Buggy is capable of splitting up his body into individual pieces and able to move them around freely due to consuming the Chop Chop Devil Fruit, which I feel like these Devil Fruit names are very self-explanatory. I don't know why I'm explaining all this. But despite taking damage, Zoro continues his fight with Buggy, and here's where he says fuck it, and flips the cannon to point directly at Buggy and his crew, followed up with Nami doing the finishing touches and lighting it, which instead of trying to get away, Buggy and his crew stood there patiently, taking a fat load to the face. And oh wow, Buggy is still alive. What a surprise. But anyways, with the Buggy Pirates taken care of, Zoro then brings Luffy to safety, where Nami passes him the key to the cage, but just as Luffy is going for it, some random dog appears and consumes it. So I think Luffy is trapped in this cage for the rest of the series. Here's when the town's mayor appears, where we then get this one backstory about the dog and his owner who passed away, but we don't got time for all of that. And oh god, a new threat has appeared, and this dude happens to be Moji of the Buggy Pirates. He then attacks Luffy with his mount, which inadvertently frees Luffy from the cage at the cost of him getting launched across the map. However, Luffy is still Daijobu after that hit, resuming his fight with Moji and simply clapping his lion creature thing by slamming it to the ground, and Moji himself with the Saitama special. Afterwards, Moji returns crying back to Buggy, on which Buggy gets very angry, causing him to cause unnecessary destruction in Orangetown, which in the process destroyed the mayor's house. The mayor then says, oh hell no, I'm gonna make you pay for this shit, and charges full force towards him. And seeing how much damage Buggy caused to this town, Luffy, Zoro, and Nami decide to head out to confront the Buggy Pirates, as well as get the map back for the Grand Line, with Nami agreeing to work with Luffy, not as a member of his crew, but as partners with a common goal. Moving forward, we now got Luffy confronting Buggy and clapping Moji once again for the fun of it. And while Luffy and Zoro are handling the pirates, Nami takes this opportunity to loot Buggy's base for their treasure and the map, which it seems like her heist was pretty successful, and now it looks like Luffy and Buggy are having a nice 1v1, with Buggy earning a death sentence for himself by putting no respect on the hat. And apparently the reason why he did this is because he has some form of beef with Shanks, which we then get slapped with this one juicy flashback with Buggy and Shanks as buddies, and Buggy, being the little rat that he is, forms a little cheeky plot to steal and sell the crew's Chop Chop fruit that they had in their possession. However, his plan quickly fails when Shanks jump scares him into swallowing the fruit whole. And goddamn, what that throat do? Well, yeah, that's pretty much the reason why Buggy holds a grudge against Shanks. And now cutting back to the present, Buggy notices Nami over at a distance with his treasure, and so he goes for her. But Luffy says no, 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 hitting him with a juicy blow. And here's when Nami does 1,000 IQ plays and ties Buggy's detached limbs together, rendering them all useless. And with his inability to fight, Luffy simply launches Buggy's head to the moon, and I guess the Buggy Pirates are now all defeated here. However, shortly after their victory, the residents of Orangetown all pull up on them all hostile and shit, because it seems they're racist against pirates, and so they all then just make a run for it, retreating the island with the treasure and the map. And as they sail off, the mayor waves them off, thanking them for saving the town from the Buggy Pirates. Moving forward, Nami tells them that she's gonna navigate them towards an island in hopes of getting a real big boy ship for them to all sail on. As they travel there, Luffy discusses recruiting more members to his crew, saying that they'll need a cook and a musician. And is this foreshadow? I don't know. But upon arriving at Gecko Island, they are then approached by this one Pinocchio-looking ass fella, introducing himself as Usopp, stating that he's the great leader of a pirate crew ruling over this island. Nami quickly calls his bluff, and Luffy follows up with telling Usopp that he knows his dad Yasopp, which has Usopp responding like, bro, I'm dead. They then all head to Syrup Village and have a nice meal together, where Luffy discusses his past with Usopp's dad, who was a part of Shanks' crew. And here's where Nami asks if there's anyone in this village who knows how to sail a ship, on which Zoro mentions that he saw a mansion at the top of the hill of this island. And Nami's like, wait, they could be rich. They can get us a ship. But with hearing the mansion getting mentioned, Usopp then spazzes out and dips, and we then cut to this one girl named Kaya, who lives in the mansion, but is unfortunately bedridden and lost both of her parents, leaving her in her butler's care. And her butler right here is very vigilant on having her not see Usopp, as he is known to being the village's biggest troll. But that doesn't stop him from seeing her, where from time to time he'll sneak up this tree to tell her some very silly stories, which makes her haha. And while he's telling her stories, Luffy, Nami, and Zoro happen to drop by the mansion after being led by these kids who told them that Usopp is probably here. And by the way, these kids are Usopp's subordinates in his little crew that he made up. Yeah. And with the mansion's gates being closed, Luffy's like, why don't we just go over it? And flings them all past the gates, where Luffy asks Kaya directly for a ship. But oh god, here comes Kaya's butler, calling Usopp's dad a filthy pirate. Oh nah. You already know Usopp wasn't just gonna sit there and take that, and walks up to him like, you can't talk about Papa like that. The butler then responds to that, telling him, like father, like son, shortly after kicking out all the intruders, like a civil man. Moving forward, Luffy then heads to Usopp to have a nice little chat with him, and as they're conversating, they end up seeing the butler from earlier, talking to this one dude named Django, who's a hypnotist, and here we learn that the butler is actually a notorious pirate named Captain Kuro, who managed to fake his death 3 years ago. And as Luffy and Usopp eavesdrop their conversation, they discover their plans to raid the village and kill Kaya to inherit her fortune, by having Django hypnotize her beforehand into writing her will. But Luffy gets up, self-reporting his position, telling them that ain't happening. On which Django attempts to use his hypnosis to knock out Luffy, and oh wow, it worked. Which now leaves Usopp as the last man standing. Usopp then retreats back to the village to warn them about the pirates gonna invade. However, they don't believe him because he's a known troll and did this many times before. And with no one listening to him, Usopp then heads to Kaya to warn her that she's the target and attempts to drag her to safety, but Kaya pulls the classic Will Smith, following up with telling him that he's nothing but pathetic, resulting in poor old Usopp running away and crying. Jump cutting to the nighttime, we then got Luffy and all of them around Usopp, who is still crying. Here they reassure him that they'll assist in stopping Kuro's attack on the village, and this is where Usopp realizes that Kuro's forces are actually approaching on the other side of the island, on the opposite shore. And so he rushes towards there, with Nami accompanying him. However, it seems those two weren't enough manpower, and quickly get overwhelmed. But soon after, we got Luffy and Zoro rolling in, and clapping all the threats, and while all that is happening, we now cut over to Kuro over here, who's in the mansion like, it's go time, and slashes the other butler working in the mansion, named Mary, with his budget Wolverine claws, and makes his way over to the scene where the Straw Hats are. Moving forward, Kaya finds Mary injured, and he informs her about Kuro's doings. This is when she takes the moment to think, maybe I should have listened to Usopp, huh? Leaving the mansion to, I don't know, handle Kuro somehow. Moving forward, we now got Kuro pulling up to the scene, and having this very intense stare down with Luffy, acting as if he's a whole ass boss battle. And here's where Kaya arrives, nearly getting rolled by Kuro. However, Usopp jumps in for the save, and orders his underlings to bring Kaya to safety. But unfortunately for them, they end up getting tailed by Django, which following that, Luffy then proceeds to sucker punch Kuro across the map, which has Kuro getting up with some crazy ass posture. And so while Luffy is handling Kuro, we got Nami over here planning to loot Kuro's ship, and Zoro handling some mini threats before retreating with Usopp. So now bringing our attention back to Luffy's fight, we end up getting some very epic action, with Kuro taking out his own teammates for the fun of it. But upon more of this very epic action, Luffy hits him with a mean headbutt, which goddamn it knocks him out. Luffy then yeets him back to his crewmates, telling them to take him and leave, and with their captain defeated, they pussy out and comply with Luffy's demand. Meanwhile, at Kaya's POV, she ends up getting caught by Django, and she agrees to write her will so that Django doesn't harm the kids. But before that happens, Zoro and Usopp manage to locate Kaya, coming in for the save, and ending Django's career with an explosive slingshot, which yeah, I think Django's dealt with here. Moving forward, with the invasion all taken care of, we then got Usopp giving an emotional speech to his crew of munchkins, telling them that he's disbanding the Usopp Pirates. Meanwhile, as Luffy, Zoro, and Nami are having a meal, we have Kaya coming to see them, thanking them for saving the village, also telling them that she has a gift for them, which is this beautiful, breedable, sexy ass ship called the Going Merry. And this ship was actually designed by Kaya's other butler, Mary, who somehow survived his injuries. This is when Usopp drops by, telling Kaya how he decided to become a pirate, on which Zoro's like, why don't you join us then, bitch? And Usopp's like, shit, let's get it. And so with getting another member to the crew, and a brand new ship, the Straw Hats then set sail, cutting to Kaya over here telling Mary that she's gonna become a doctor, which I'm sure she'll appear again later in the series. Moving forward, as the Straw Hats are sailing the seas, they end up coming up with a final draft for their crew's logo. And just look at how immaculate it is. Here's when they enter a storm, where Nami says she's navigating them towards the legendary Treasure Island, which upon arriving on it, they end up getting surrounded by some very scary creatures, and hear a voice telling telling them to leave, stating that he's the protective god of the island. However, Luffy manages to chase the dude in the bushes and corners him, which it turns out to be this Goomba named Gaimon, who's been stuck in this chest for 20 years. Gaimon then ends up telling his backstory about him and his crew, who landed on this island a long time ago, looking for some treasure, and as a result, they found nothing and dipped, leaving him behind, because in the process of searching, Gaimon ended up falling into this chest, getting stuck in it, after trying to climb this one mountain, which he says has treasure at the top. Nami then tells him that they'll get the treasure for him, on which Luffy heads up there, and upon further inspection, Luffy discovers that all 6 of the chests are all empty, which leaves Gaimon in tears. This is where Luffy tries to recruit Gaimon to his crew to search for the One Piece, but Gaimon says fuck off, telling him that this island is already a home to him, with his pets being family. And so the Straw Hats then head off this island, which on their ship right to their next destination, we got Zoro napping over here, and here's where we get slapped by his backstory, where we got Zoro as a kid, pulling up to a dojo, ready to throw hands with the dojo master, Koshiro. Koshiro then sends out his daughter Kuina, who is also one of his students, to 1v1 Zoro, and goddamn, Zoro gets clapped, which motivates him to undergo a training guard, taking on spar after spar, and to think he did all of that just to get clapped by Kuina once again. And to rub salt into the wound, she even talks that shit, calling him weak. And so moving forward in the flashback, we got Zoro meeting Kuina once again, with the intent to face her in a 1v1 using real swords. They end up following through with this fight, and would you look at that, Zoro gets clapped once again, and now we got him over here crying about his L. Here's when Kuina goes over her goals, telling Zoro how she wants to be the world's strongest swordsman, but says it's impossible because she's a girl, saying that women grow up weaker than men, which I'm not entirely sure if we could say that in 2023. Zoro then declares that defeating her is his goal, and makes a promise with Kuina that at least one of them becomes the world's strongest swordsman, which following that, we then get another Zoro training arc, where soon after he gets the unfortunate news that Kuina is dead, and apparently the cause of death was her just being rather clumsy and slipping down some steps. But moving forward, we then got Koshiro reminiscing about his daughter to Zoro, and follows up leaving Kuina's spirit and dreams in Zoro's care, giving him her sword called the Wado Ichimonji. Here's where Zoro tells him that he'll become the strongest swordsman ever to be alive, which honestly, I kinda believe him. And so time skipping 8 years, Zoro then heads out to fulfill that very promise. And so now cutting back to the present, we then got this one dude aggressively boarding the Mary, on which Zoro recognizes him as Johnny, which Johnny responds to him back calling him Big Bro. Shortly after, we then have another dude boarding the ship injured, and his name happens to be Yosuke, on which they then squirt some juices into his mouth to revive him, which we then learn that Johnny and Yosuke happen to be bounty hunters who worked with Zoro in the past as bounty hunting buddies. Luffy then asks them if they know a chef they can recruit to the crew, and Johnny tells him that he knows a place near the Grand Line where he can find someone, which brings them to this one portable restaurant posted in the middle of the sea called Baratie. Upon their arrival, this one marine named Full Body pulls up right next to them, talking some shit to Johnny and Yosuke, making Johnny throw some bounties on the ground at the fit of rage, which has Nami gluing her eyes to one of them, which belongs to this one pirate named Arlong, seemingly causing her some distress. Full Body then proceeds to fire at the Mary, on which Luffy simply deflects a cannonball, unintentionally redirecting it to the Baratie. With hitting the restaurant, Luffy is then brought to the principal's office, where he talks to the head chef of the ship, Zeph. Zeph then tells Luffy in order to pay for the damages, he'll have to work a year on the Baratie, unpaid, to make it up. Meanwhile, the rest of the Straw Hats enter the restaurant and see some commotion going on between a chef named Sanji and Full Body, who is out here wasting food. And I wonder who this Sanji guy is. He's definitely not a main character, right? But anyways, with Full Body raging over here, he then threatens that he'll have this restaurant shut down. Here's where Luffy and Zeph fall through the ceiling, and Full Body ends up getting roundhouse kicked by Zeph for his attitude. Just as that happens, another pirate pulls up with a gun, demanding for some food, and his name is Gin, who has 0 berries to his name. And without any money, he swiftly gets yeeted out of the restaurant. However, Sanji ends up giving him a free meal afterwards, seeing that the man's just starving. Gin very much appreciates his generosity and sails off showing his gratitude. This is where Luffy pops up asking Sanji to join his crew as a cook, but he quickly gets denied, with Sanji giving him the reasoning that there's a particular reason why he works at this restaurant. Shortly after, we got Zeph yelling at them to get back to work, and so they get back to it, which we then have Zeph questioning Sanji on why he doesn't just join the pirates and leave, telling him that he's no longer needed at the restaurant, but Sanji's like, nope, I'm staying here until the day you die. Moving forward, we then got some pirates pulling up to the Baratie, which happens to begin leading back the captain of the Krieg Pirates, here to beg for some food and water. Upon being blessed with some food by Sanji, Krieg then does a complete 180 and attacks Sanji, announcing to everyone on the ship that he's taken over. Krieg then orders the chefs to prepare 100 meals and water for his crew who is starving and dehydrated, on which Zeph delivers, giving him a large-ass bag, telling him to leave, on which Krieg then goes back to his ship with the food and drink supply, where we then got Gin over here talking about his traumatizing experience on the Grand Line, where he encountered this one pirate named Hawkeye, which is revealed to be the guy that Zoro is searching for. And speak of the devil, Hawkeye managed to tail the Krieg Pirates and end up slashing their ship in one single blow. Meanwhile, we got Yosuke and Johnny coming to tell the Straw Hats that Nami ditched them, taking the Mary and the treasure along with her. Luffy then sees the Mary still out in the distance and orders Zoro and Usopp to take a ship and head towards Nami. But it seems Zoro has other plans and sees Hawkeye out in the distance, and he's like, oh my god, now's my chance to fulfill my promise, because Hawkeye is known to being the strongest swordsman in the world. And oh dear god, it seems Zoro gets rolled here. But because Zoro is very strong-willed, Hawkeye then requests for Zoro's name, on which with Zoro telling him, he then follows up with telling Zoro that he hasn't seen anyone like him in a while, and gaining his respect, Hawkeye then decides to finish Zoro off with his strongest sword, on which Zoro is like, you won't do it, bitch, eating the slash like a champ. And yeah, I think it's GG here. But shortly after, Hawkeye then reveals his real name, Drakeo Mihawk, telling everyone around to calm down. He didn't kill Zoro because it's too early for him to die, saying that he'll be waiting for the day he surpasses him. He then casually takes his leave, which soon after that, Usopp along with Yosuke, Johnny, and Zoro go after Nami, and as they set sail, Usopp tells Luffy the next time all 5 of them reunite, they'll head to the Grand Line together. I mean, this is assuming Sanji's gonna join them, which I wonder if he will. We then got Luffy over here negotiating a deal with with Zeph, asking him if he takes care of the Krieg pirates for him, who are now invading the Baratie, will that be enough to free him from the slave labor? On which Zeph is like, yeah, sure. We then got Sanji over here on the battlefield, fighting the Krieg pirates and kickboxing in this bitch because he made a vow a long time ago that he will only use his hands for cooking, stating dedicated to the craft. And would you look at that, he gets clapped here, quite literally, by Pearl of the Krieg pirates, where we soon then get hit up by a Sanji flashback with him sailing the seas on this one cruise ship called the Orbit as one of these ship's apprentice chefs. Here we learn about Sanji's dream to find the All Blue, which is a legendary sea rumored to contain fish from all 4 of the seas, which is truly a chef's wet dream. However, moving forward in this flashback, the Orbit happens to get attacked by the Cook pirates led by Redfoot Zeph, aka Zeph. I think we all know who Zeph is. And with the Orbit being raided, Sanji comes out trying to defend the ship and himself, but easily gets overpowered, where we have him crying on the floor, determined that he will see the All Blue one day. This is when the storm picks up and a wave just slaps Sanji off the ship, on which Zeph goes after him to save him, but in the process of doing so, he pulls a page out of Shanks' book and minus 1 limb. Upon saving Sanji though, he then brings them both to safety onto this one deserted island, where he gives Sanji a bag of food to ration, which after 3 months, unfortunately the supply didn't last long, and so Sanji heads to Zeph's side of the island, seeing that his bag of food is still full. And upon trying to steal from it, Sanji discovers that there was never food to begin with, and that the bag only had treasure, finding out that Zeph was out here starving the entire time, and even sacrificed his leg to save him, which actually in the manga he ate his own leg. But here's where Sanji goes like, God damn, you did this all for me? On which Zeph tells him it's because he had the same dream as him, which is to see the All Blue, before collapsing. But luckily for them, it seems help comes around just in time. Now cutting back to the present, we then have Sanji over here very determined to repay Zeph for his kindness, and holds his ground to protect the restaurant. Here's where Pearl decides it's a good idea to charge both Luffy and Sanji, on which we then have Gin coming in for the save, turning against his crew, because he now feels deep regret in bringing the Krieg pirates over here after Sanji saved him with the free Lunchable. Krieg, angered by his betrayal, retires his role as a spectator and joins the fight shooting some poisonous gas. However, with Luffy going clutch mode, he manages to yoink some gas masks for him and Sanji, with Gin sacrificing himself to deliver it to Sanji, and with the poisonous gas quickly clearing up, Luffy takes his opportunity to simply clap Krieg, swiftly defeating him. Gin then gets up somehow unfazed by the poison, picks up Krieg and prepares to head out with his crew. The chefs of the Baratie then provide them a very spacious ship to leave, and there they go. Following that, we then got Yosaku returning to the Baratie via Shark, notifying Luffy that they marked the general location where Nami is. Moving forward, Zeph then insists that Luffy goes on ahead with Sanji and take him to the Grand Line with him, as that is also a necessary step for him to reach his dreams. And with Sanji overhearing this conversation, this has him in deep contemplation. But then he was like, I guess I'll join you in your journey to become the King of Pirates. And so before heading off with Luffy and Yosaku, he shows his gratitude towards Zeph, thanking him for everything, having a rather emotional send-off as they say their goodbyes, and it now seems like the Straw Hats officially have a cook. Moving forward, as Luffy, Sanji, and Yosaku are making their way towards Nami, this is where Yosaku warns them that they're heading towards an island ruled by the pirate Arlong, which was that one very scary bounty from earlier. Meanwhile, cutting to Nami's POV, she arrives at Konomi Island and makes her way to Arlong's base, Arlong Park, where she meets the legend himself, delivering him some treasure, while the rest of his crew rejoice with her return. Moving forward, now cutting over to Zoro's group, they arrive near Arlong Park, where some of Arlong's henchmen spot them, and with seeing them heading their way, Usopp and Johnny dip the ship, leaving Zoro for dead. And upon their escape, Usopp and Johnny make their way to the island, where they find it in absolute ruins, and soon after bump into another of Arlong's henchmen, who chases after Usopp while Johnny sneaks away like a little rat. Here's when Usopp bumps into 2 residents living here, and the woman actually ends up helping out Usopp by misleading the fishmen into another direction, which then following that, the woman then brings Usopp to her house, introducing herself as Nojiko, who's actually Nami's adoptive sister. Meanwhile, with Zoro getting ditched, he ends up getting captured and brought back to Arlong Park, where he finds out that Nami's working with Arlong, revealing to him that she's one of the leaders of the Arlong Pirates, flexing her Arlong tattoo on him. Arlong then proceeds to go on talking about how Nami prioritizes money over her parents' death, which after seeing Nami's brief recoiled response, Zoro sees through her facade and challenges her humanity by jumping into the water all tied up, pressuring Nami to save him, which it seemed to work. Upon saving him, Nami then punches Zoro and tells the Arlong Pirates to lock him up, which moving forward past that, as Arlong takes a moment away from the base to bully some humans, Nami then pulls up to Zoro's cell, freeing him, telling him to hurry and escape. On his way out, Zoro claps all the Arlong Pirates in the area and bumps into an octopus man named Hachan, and despite him being a part of the Arlong Pirates, he guides him in the direction where Usopp is. Moving forward, Nami meets up with Nojiko talking about how money will fix everything, revealing her deal with Arlong, which is to pay him 100 million berries to buy the village from him. And speaking of Arlong, he happens to return to his base, where he finds all of his men injured, and one of them snitches that Zoro did this to them. Soon after, Usopp comes in getting captured, and he gets interrogated about his association with Zoro, which then leads into the topic of Nami, who's been acting quite sussy as of recent, and they start getting a suspicion if she's working with Zoro and all of them. Here's where Nami pulls up like, cut this shit out, telling them, look at my tattoo! It's proof, bro! And Arlong is like, you're right, we've known each other for 8 years now. And here's where Usopp gets up squealing about Nami's betrayal, which has Nami pulling out the shank and stabbing him, and is that nut? Before pushing him into the water to drown. Moving forward, Luffy's squad manages to fly their way all the way into Konomi Island, coincidentally crashing where Zoro is. This is where Johnny pulls up, notifying everyone that Nami has killed Usopp. And speaking of the devil, we got Nami pulling up shortly after, attempting to burn bridges with them. But it seems like her efforts weren't strong enough, and so she rage quits, running away, which soon after Usopp reunites with his crew. And apparently he's alive, because Nami actually took one for the team and stabbed her own hand in order to create the blood effect before having Usopp fall in the body of water. And here's when Nojiko arrives, telling telling the Straw Hats there's absolutely nothing they could do to stop Arlong, but Luffy's like, nah, I'm good, and walks past her. And with the main character leaving, Nojiko then goes on to explain her backstory with Nami and their adoptive mother Belmere, going on how Belmere was once a marine, and she went through this whole ass war with some pirates, with a whole lot of death and destruction, with this one village getting absolutely destroyed. But within the rubble, she ends up finding these two girls roaming around deserted, who happen to be Nojiko and Nami. And with being a good Samaritan, she then takes the two in, taking them back to Kokoyashi village, where she settles down and raises them as her own, and being the very supportive motherly figure they always needed. Which we then learn here about Nami's dream to draw a complete world map, which in order to do so, she intends to travel all over the world and do that shit by hand. However, moving forward in this flashback, we then learn that Belmere has been struggling with money and the ability to feed herself, but plays it off to her daughters that everything is Daijo Boo, and that she's staying vitalized with the tangerines in the backyard. But oh god, here we got some crazy family drama, where Nami goes off about them not being related by blood, and goes off about her mother's finances, which gets her ass bitch slapped before storming off. And just then, we now have the Arlong pirates pulling up to the island, where Arlong just straight up takes over the island the second he sets foot in it, charging everyone a living fee of 100,000 berries per adult and 50,000 berries per child, which in the process of doing so, Arlong sees some smoke coming out of a chimney out in the distance, which happens to be coming from Belmere's house, which with Nami and Nojiko sneaking through the bushes, they see that Arlong is heading towards their mother and try to rush back to the house to save her, but it seems they were too late, and Arlong invites himself into the house, where Belmere was ready and takes him on in a 1v1, which unfortunately her power level was too low, and ends up getting tortured in the process. Here's when Nojiko and Nami appear, confirming that Belmere has two children living with her, meaning that she'll have to come up with 200,000 berries to spare all of them. But unfortunately, she only had 100,000 berries stored away, and being the god tier mother that she is, she takes one for the fam. Which moving forward to the following day, Nami decides to pull up to the village, destroying her reputation by joining the Arlong pirates. But she's like, look guys, I got money though, which sadly gets her shunned by the village. Which fast forwarding into the night, we then got Nojiko approaching a crying Nami, which she soon learns about her plan to get 100 million berries to, you know, buy the village and all. And yeah, with that concludes story time with Nojiko, which we then cut over to Nami revealing that she has 7 million berries to go until she has enough to fulfill her agreement. However, here's when the Marine Captain Nezumi arrives, demanding the island sheriff Genzo to lead him to Nami's house. Which, if you don't know who Nezumi is, basically he's a rat-looking motherfucker that works with Arlong, and pretty much he's been accepting bribes from Arlong in order to cover up his evil doings on this island from the Marines by abusing his Marine Captain status. So I think this is what you would call corruption. But anyways, here we got the Marines confronting Nami, with Nezumi demanding that she hands over all the treasures that she's stolen from pirates, because stealing is stealing, and that's a no-no. And with him saying it's a direct order from the world government, she's unable to resist and ends up getting her treasure confiscated. But Nami's like, oh hell nah, and tries to fight back. However, is then soon stopped by Nojiko, who ends up getting shot while shielding her. This is where Luffy pops up like, do you need some help, bro? On which Nami then rages at him and runs away. Kinda rude, man. But she goes back to Arlong confronting him about the Marines that he personally had under his control, stealing her treasure. Which Arlong responds to that like, how's that my problem? Which leaves Nami not knowing what to do with herself, and so she runs back to town, where she finds that the villagers are planning a rebellion against Arlong. Which surely they have this in the bag, right? And so with the townspeople walking to their death, this is where Nami gets enveloped in anger, grabbing her knife and undergoes a messy tattoo removal procedure. But here's when Luffy appears stopping her, and upon refusing Luffy's help at first, she then reconsiders after crying helplessly on the ground. Which then Luffy's like, hold my hat, in this very iconic scene, on which he then heads out, with the other Straw Hats already prepared for combat. And so moving forward, the Straw Hats make their way to Arlong Park, making their own entrance by busting the gate down, which then Luffy proceeds to clap all of Arlong's minions real quick before taking on Arlong himself. And while Luffy's doing that, we got Zoro going up against Hachan, Usopp going up against some fat ass lips, and Sanji going up against a very thick fish man, on which all of them managed to contribute to the team and take care of their given opponents, leaving Arlong as the last threat standing. Which after a nice, long, and very epic fight, Luffy then follows through and stomps the fuck out of Arlong, destroying his base along with his career, screaming afterwards that Nami's a certified Nakama, which has her crying over here, man. Moving forward, Luffy gets tossed up as being the town's hero, and we now got everyone rejoicing with the downfall of Arlong, which Nezumi pulls up on some goofy shit, telling everyone since Arlong has been defeated, he'll be taking all the treasure for himself, which Zoro rocks his shit, telling him to shut his bitch ass up, which we then got Nami following up with getting her revenge on him for shooting Nojiko and destroying Belmere's tangerine orchard, and she soon after bullies him into returning her treasure, as well as forcing him to distribute all of Arlong's fortunes to the people on the island. Nezumi agrees to those terms, retreating like a scrub, telling the Straw Hats that they will rue the day for disrespecting him. And so moving forward, as everyone is celebrating Arlong's defeat, Nami talks to Nojiko about becoming a pirate and gets her Arlong tattoo replaced with a new combination tattoo of a tangerine and a pinwheel, which are two symbols of her childhood. The pinwheel being from Genzo's hat, which made her laugh as a child, and the tangerine refers to the tangerine orchard that her mother had, which would now plan on leaving her hometown. Nami leaves all the treasure and berries that she collected over the years for the people of Kokoyashi village, and before heading out, she tells Belmere's spirit that she has decided to leave this island and doesn't know when she'll be returning. And so as the Straw Hats are setting sail, leaving Johnny and Yosuke behind, here's where Nami comes in sprinting, running past everyone, and manages to board the ship with some insane hops. Like, God damn! And as she ran past everyone, she managed to pickpocket all of them in the process as a nice final troll before setting sail as the Straw Hat Pirates' official navigator. Meanwhile, we got Nezumi over here snitching to the Marines about the Straw Hats, and upon discussing Luffy, they conclude it's appropriate to give him a 30 million berry bounty, considering that he rolled 3 other bounties worth nearly half as much, which gives Luffy a good old laugh as he sails with his crew, and Mihawk even manages to deliver his bounty over to Shanks, on which has him going like, I'm proud of you, son, and word even spreads to Luffy's hometown, which has them pogging about his progression of becoming the King of Pirates. But anyways, now moving forward, we got Nami navigating them towards the famous city of Loguetown, which is known to to being the legendary location where the King of Pirates, Goldie Roger, was born and executed, on which Luffy's like, alright, sick, let's go. Meanwhile, as the Straw Hats are making their way to Loguetown, we then cut over across the world to Buggy, forming an alliance with Alvida, with their mutual goal to take out Luffy. And yes, this is Alvida. And so moving forward once again, we got the Straw Hats arriving at Loguetown, where Luffy decides to head out on his own to check out the execution platform on which Goldie Roger was executed on which while Luffy is busy with that, the other Straw Hats disperse into the city as well to fulfill their little slice of life arc. Moving forward, one of the marine captains posted in Loguetown named Smoker gets notified that Luffy has arrived, so he heads out to do his marine duties. Meanwhile, we got Zoro over here pulling up to this one sword shop, looking to purchase 2 other swords to complete his set. But here's when he bumps into this one marine named Tashigi, who reminds him of his childhood rival, Kuina. Upon meeting her, she seems to be a sword enthusiast and assists Zoro into purchasing his swords, which he happens to acquire the Sundai Kitetsu and the Yubashiri. Moving forward, we now got Luffy making his way to the execution platform, which we then get this one backstory with Goldie Roger getting executed and him challenging the world to find the One Piece treasure, igniting the Great Pirate Era. Luffy then stands where Goldie Roger was once executed and is like, wowzers, this is pretty cool. But here's when he's then approached by the Buggy Pirates, Alvida, and the Marines, getting surrounded by them, which it seems Luffy gets pinned down here and oh god, is he gonna get executed by Buggy? Oh, false alarm, because it seems Luffy wins the lottery here and gets freed by getting struck by lightning. And with that said, Zoro and Sanji then make their appearance, retreating with Luffy, which as they are retreating, they happen to bump into Tashigi, who goes like, wait a sec, you were rowing Zoro this entire time? Detesting him for being a pirate, on which Zoro goes on ahead and takes her on, allowing Sanji and Luffy to move forward. And of course, with Zoro being Zoro, he dominates her with ease, but doesn't quite finish her off, and shows maximum disrespect here, going like, we done here, before walking off. This, however, gets under Tashigi's skin, and she's like, it's cause I'm a woman, right? Going off how she wished she was born as a male. And oh my god, this is just like Kuina, which has Zoro pointing out that she's her fucking clone. Meanwhile, over at Sanji and Luffy's POV, they end up getting cut off once again, but this time by Smoker, the intimidating marine captain, which Luffy decides to take this fellow on, allowing Sanji to go on ahead, which is now cutting over to the Mary. We got Moji over here trying to sabotage the Straw Hats and burn their ship down, but here's when Nami and Usopp arrive, worried that the Marines are heading towards their ship, which it seems they were right about that. And so with the Marines nearby, Nami and Usopp board the ship, sailing off, leaving Moji for dead. And as they sail off, they come in contact with Sanji, who handles all the Marines for them. Now cutting back to our main character, Monkey D. Luffy, he's now fighting Smoker, but quickly gets overpowered by him. And here's where we have this one dude in a green cloak pulling up, stopping Smoker from attacking Luffy, and he seems to be quite the intimidating fella, which after exchanging a few words with Smoker, a huge gust appears, ragdolling everyone across the entirety of Loguetown, which coincidentally has Luffy reuniting with his crew. And upon being reunited, they then all make their way to the Mary, escaping the island, and this is where Smoker is like, we'll get them next time, boys, ordering his troops that they'll be entering the Grand Line to pursue the Straw Hats. And Tashigi is determined to tag along, fixated on capturing Zoro's cock. Moving forward, following their escape, Nami spots a lighthouse out in the distance, which she considers being the guiding light to the Grand Line's entrance. And so before heading there, we then have a nice little ceremony here, with all of them sharing their life goals and showing off who have the better feet. And fast forwarding a little bit more, the Straw Hats manage to make it to the entrance of the Grand Line, with the water current going upwards, because fuck gravity, I guess. Upon getting through this petite, tight-ass passageway, they manage to make it all the way up to the summit and onto the other side of the reverse mountain, officially entering the Grand Line. Upon their entry, they end up encountering this one large whale, looking a bit scratched up, and due to the fact that they have no brakes, they end up making a collision with it, breaking a piece of the Mary off, which causes Luffy to get angry and punching the whale for destroying his favorite sea. As a result of the punch, the whale rages back at Luffy, causing everyone on the ship to get consumed, excluding Luffy himself, who managed to escape and enter the whale through the entrance at the top of it, because all whales have entrances like this. And with the Straw Hats now entering the whale, it seems it doesn't have very conventional insides and looks more like an art gallery. And here's where they find this one old man living inside of it, named Crocus, telling them that he's the lighthouse keeper at Twins Capes, also telling the Straw Hats that the name of the whale is Laboon. Here's when Laboon decides to act up and start banging his head against the red line, making everyone within him shake around, and as a result, this causes Luffy to ricochet into 2 other people inside the whale, with the codename Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine. And upon crashing into them, they then all free fall the way down to Laboon's stomach acid, where all the other Straw Hats are. Meanwhile, we got Crocus heading to another part of Laboon to inject him with a sedative in order to calm him down. Afterwards, Crocus returns to the Straw Hats, where he recognizes Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine as thugs who are trying to whale hunt Laboon, and tells them that he's gonna protect Laboon till the day he dies. Here's when Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine pull out some cannons and fires at the walls of Laboon's stomach, on which Crocus decides to jump in front of it and tank the damage, which has Luffy going like, oh hell nah, bonking Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, knocking them out. And following that, we now have Crocus explaining why Laboon has been banging his head against the red line, which causes scarring on his forehead, and that's because for the past 50 years, he's been waiting for a certain pirate crew to return to him, and believes by destroying this mountain, he could get to the West Blue and find his Nakama. Here's when we get this one flashback with Laboon and the Lombard Pirates having a great time, and the reason why they stuck around for so long is because their ship had to undergo repairs, and upon getting their ship repaired, they then head off promising Laboon that they'll return, leaving him in Crocus's care, which after some years, Crocus tells Laboon, bro, your crew is gone, I think it's time to move on, which has Laboon going through some denial. And so moving forward, Crocus then frees the Straw Hats from Laboon's stomach, opening the gates for them, and what kind of surgery did this whale go through? But anyways, upon exiting the whale, here's where Luffy decides to have a wrestling match with Laboon, which ends in a draw, and here's where Luffy tells Laboon that even though his homies are dead, he'll be the one to personally come back to see him again as rivals, so they can face off again, which has Laboon rather moved. Moving forward, Crocus warns the Straw Hats about the Grand Line, informing Nami that they'll need a log post to navigate around it, because apparently normal compasses don't work here, due to each island having a unique magnetic field. Crocus then follows up with telling her that the log post compass is a special type of compass that has the ability to record these magnetic fields and will always point in the direction of the next nearest island. And upon arriving at said island, it must remain on it for a certain period of time before moving on to the next, because these log poses do take their time to update and adjust. I swear they just need better internet or some shit. But anyways, Crocus then goes on explaining at the end of all of it, after following the log pose all the way through to the end, the final point of the Grand Line is this one island called Laugh-Tail, or Raftel. Why is Japanese so hard to translate? Which the only person who confirms its existence is of course none other than the King of Pirates, Goldie Roger. Cause that man just fucking accomplished everything. And it's rumored that the One Piece has been left on that island. Soon after Crocus explaining all of that, here's where Luffy manages to pick up a log pose from their ship, which was actually left behind by Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, who left it behind by accident when they snuck away. And the log pose unfortunately didn't last long, with Sanji and Luffy breaking it in their little silly fight. But luckily for them, Crocus comes in clutch and gives them his, thanking them for helping Laboon. And here's when Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine return, begging on their knees to bring them back to Whiskey Peak, which is where they're from, giving them the reasoning that their ship is busted and they can't get back. Luffy just says, fuck it, let's trust these randoms and bring them to Whiskey Peak. And so they head off saying their goodbyes to Crocus and Laboon. Moving forward, the Straw Hats manage to make their way to Whiskey Peak, and as they're approaching it, Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine decide to disembark early, hopping into the water and swimming away. And so now entering the island, they are greeted by the people on it and get welcomed by the Mayor Igaram, which then following their welcome, they then get a very fun party thrown for them, which results in the Straw Hats getting wasted and passing out. And following that night, Igaram, Miss Wednesday, Mr. Nine, and Miss Monday, who's built like a whole ass JoJo's character, meet up discussing a plot to rob the Straw Hats and turn Luffy in for his bounty, because you know, they're out here struggling with that money. However, Zoro overhears them and figures that they're all bounty hunters working for Baratie Works, which is a criminal organization. Igaram then says, well, I guess you gotta die here, because you know our secret, and sends out his men to kill him. However, with Zoro being Zoro, you already know he claps these NPC threats with ease, and even claps Miss Monday, Miss Wednesday, Mr. Nine, and Igaram in the process. Here's when Mr. Five and Miss Valentine pull up, going on about how a VIP snuck out of the Alabasta Kingdom into Baratie Works. And with hearing that, here's where Igaram gets nervous and panics, blasting Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. However, in shonen fashion, they survive the blast, and here's when Mr. Five reveals Igaram's real identity, as well as Miss Wednesday's, revealing that Igaram is the captain of the Alabasta Royal Guard, and Miss Wednesday is the princess of the Alabasta Kingdom, with her real name being Vivi. And pretty much Mr. Five and Miss Valentine were sent here to kill them, and while all that commotion is happening, we got Zoro over here enjoying a nice bottle of wine, which is definitely worth mentioning. Anyways, moving past that, Igaram ends up getting smoked by Mr. Five, on which he then tells Vivi to retreat, and so she does, which causes her to be chased by them. And this is where Zoro arrives to the scene, with Igaram begging him to protect Vivi and escort her back to Alabasta safely, despite this being an unreasonable request. And this is where Nami pops up, eavesdropping the whole conversation, asking him for 1 billion berries for the job. Igaram is unsure if he could deliver that request, and tells Nami once they save Vivi, she can negotiate the price with her directly. Nami then says, well, Zoro, you know what to do. And so moving forward, as Mr. Five and Miss Valentine catch up to Vivi, Zoro comes in for the save. However, this is when Luffy pulls up very angry at Zoro for hurting the quote-unquote nice people of the village, which after a little silly fight, Luffy and Zoro then turn to the threats, Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, and simply clap them before turning against each other once again and resuming their fight. But here's when Nami arrives telling them to cut this shit out, and here's when Vivi questions them for the reason for saving her. And upon being asked for 1 billion berries, she says that she's unable to deliver that amount, however appreciates their efforts for saving her. Vivi then goes on explaining the state of the Alabasta Kingdom, telling them that it was once a peaceful place, but is now in a civil war with the people revolting. And with the civil war happening, you know, there's no money, okay? She then follows up explaining that Baratie Works were actually the ones responsible in manipulating the people into revolting, which led to her and Igaram infiltrating the organization to figure out their motive. And upon doing so, they found out that Baratie Works' main objective is to take over Alabasta. Luffy then asked the taboo question of the identity of the organization's leader, which is apparently one of the 7 warlords of the sea named Crocodile, which Vivi accidentally slips up and tells them in front of Mr. 13 and Miss Friday, who are watch over animals that serve under Crocodile as messengers. And so they then fly away to report to Crocodile that there's an imposter among them. I need to stop with these references, bro. But yeah, with Mr. 13 and Miss Friday heading out, they also put the Straw Hats on a hit list as well for knowing this information. And so shortly after that, Igaram makes his appearance, telling them his plan to play as the decoy so they can retreat the island with Vivi, also warning them about the dangers of Crocodile, who formerly had an 80 million berry bounty before becoming a warlord, which if you don't know what a warlord is, it's basically a legally authorized pirate who works closely with the world government, pardoning them from their previous crimes and bounty. And there are a maximum of 7 warlords that can coexist. And with Igaram telling them the dangers, Luffy is like, yo, this shit kinda sound fun, and is more than happy to escort Vivi. Vivi then pulls on an internal pose, giving it to Igaram, and this one is directed to go straight to Alabasta. And what separates the internal pose compared to the log pose is that an internal pose permanently remembers the magnetic field of one location rather than collecting multiple, and will always point in the direction of the location saved on it. Igaram then sets sail, telling them that they'll meet again at Alabasta, and oh shit, it seems he gets absolutely nuked here, which we now just got everyone staring at this tragedy in disbelief. They then all rush towards the alternative escape route, dragging the other Straw Hats who are passed out along, and upon boarding the ship and sailing off, this one woman with a hat appears near them, indirectly telling Vivi that she was the one who killed Igaram. Vivi recognizes her from Baratie Works, telling the Straw Hats that she's Miss All Sunday, and Crocodile's right-hand man, or woman. Miss All Sunday then passes an internal post to the Straw Hats, telling them that it's a nice cheeky shortcut to Alabasta, also stating that no one at Baratie Works knows of its existence, and should be a very safe route to travel through. Luffy says, fuck this shit. On which Miss All Sunday says, well, you're lost, before heading out on her turtle. And so moving forward, the Straw Hats now arrive at the next island, Little Garden, where upon docking the ship, they all decide to split up, with Luffy heading out with Vivi, Zoro and Sanji going in their separate ways to face off who can catch the biggest prey, and Nami and Usopp stay on the ship on lookout duty. And as everyone is out here exploring the island, we then got this one big fella approaching the Mary, and it happens to be this giant named Buggy, which out of fear, Usopp and Nami play dead, which leads Buggy bringing them back to his lair while cooking his next meal. Meanwhile, at Luffy and Vivi's POV, they meet up with another giant named Dory, where Dory explains his duel between Buggy that's been going on for about 100 years, with all 73,465 of their duels ending in a draw. And just as his story concludes, the island's volcano erupts, which is the signal for them to fight, and so the two giants then get at it, and it's revealed that both of them have a 100 million berry bounty to them, which members of Baroku work are plotting to claim it, revealing that Mr. 5, Mr. 3, Miss Valentine, and Miss Golden Week are also on the island, also revealing that they're after the Straw Hats and Vivi. Moving forward, the giants duel ends in a draw once again, for the 73,466th time, and as Dory's having a nice conversation with Luffy and Vivi, he goes for his drink, and that's when his alcohol blows up as he consumes it, and shifts the blame to Luffy and Vivi, who had nothing to do with it, and attacks them. Luffy then defends himself against Dory, clapping him, which soon after the volcano goes off once again, signaling the giants' next duel, and in the process of this volcanic eruption, Luffy ends up getting smothered by this rock, disabling him from moving for an entire episode. And so as the giants fight, Buggy then proceeds to roll Dory, who is handicapped from fighting Luffy, and the exploding boost that Baroku work set up, and after all these years, they finally get a decisive victor, which I don't know if we could say it was legitimate or not. And so moving forward, we now got Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine arriving, kidnapping the duck, and with attempting to get him back, Vivi and Usopp end up getting destroyed, which we then got Mr. 3 pulling up, splooging all over the Straw Hats, as well as the giants, restraining them in his wax. Here's when we got the main character pulling up to the scene, with Usopp and the duck in main character fashion to take on the threats. And while Luffy takes on Mr. 3 in this very epic battle, we got Usopp and the duck helping everyone else stuck in the wax cake, freeing them by melting it with a little bit of fire. And with Zoro freed from the wax, he then proceeds to clap Mr. 5, and Luffy over here finishes his job and handles Mr. 3. And elsewhere, away from all the fighting, we got Sanji finding Mr. 3's secret base and picks up a phone call, or I'm sorry, a transponder snail, which has Big Daddy Crocodile on the line, asking for a progress report on the mission. Sanji then submits a false report telling him that the mission is complete in eliminating the Straw Hats and Vivi, which, believing that he's talking to Mr. 3, he believes this report, and following that report, Crocodile then tells Sanji that he has sent Mr. 13 and Miss Friday to deliver an internal post which leads to Alabasta, which Sanji goes on ahead and intercepts it, clapping the two of them and gaining possession of it. Soon after hanging up, Crocodile then orders Miss All Sunday to send Mr. 2 to Little Garden and eliminate Mr. 3 on his way to Alabasta, because fuck him, I guess. Moving forward, it seems the giants have squashed their beef after that one last duel, and here's when Sanji arrives where the rest of the crew is, telling them that they are cleared from Crocodile's hit list and that he managed to acquire an internal post directed towards Alabasta, which has everyone feeling quite cheerful. And with that said, they then all set sail towards Alabasta, saying their goodbyes to Buggy and Dory, and oh god, it seems they're about to be eaten by a massive island eater. But here's when the giants come in for the save, and we have a nice little standoff here. Moving forward, on their way to Alabasta, Nami ends up catching some shit and gets a high fever, and with Vivi reading the newspaper, she finds that the state of Alabasta is getting worse, and so after getting hit by this double whammy of bad news, they now enter a snow biome, taking a detour to find a doctor for Nami, where they enter this one island called Drum Island, and upon their entry, they are told by the people living here to leave because they're nothing but pirate scum, and they even pull out the Glock on Vivi in the process, and oh shit, I think she might be dead. Just kidding. Luffy and Vivi then get on their knees, begging them to help out Nami, and they're like, I guess we could trust the main character. And upon being escorted into town, this one dude named Dalton informs them that they only have one doctor on this island, which they label as a witch, and that she's told to be located at the Drum Castle, on which Luffy and Sanji then head towards there, taking Nami along, while Vivi and Usopp stay back to listen to Dalton's backstory, where he goes on about a recent attack by the Blackbeard pirates, which destroyed this kingdom and led to their former monarch Wapol to flee the island, which was kind of a good thing for them. Meanwhile, as Sanji and Luffy are making their way to the doctor, they encounter an abundance of Pack-a-Punch 3 Zero rabbits, which after being attacked by them, they end up making peace with them in the end, with Luffy helping one of them stuck in snow after an avalanche. But somewhere in between, Luffy manages to get extra luggage due to the fact that Sanji's now injured. And so moving forward, we now got Wapol, the leader of the Blinking Pirates, pulling up to Drum Island to reclaim his throne. And after fighting through Dalton and the residents living here, he then makes his way to Luffy, on which Luffy simply walks past them, not viewing them as a threat. But of course, with doing that, this causes the Blinking Pirates to try to jump Luffy, but here's when the rabbits from before come in for the save, having the main characters back. And so moving forward, Luffy then undergoes a very intense journey to get to this doctor, climbing up fucking Mount Everest in this bitch, while dragging two people along, and oh, would you look at that, he makes it to the top. And upon getting to the top, they then find their way into the castle, where Nami and Sanji get treated by the witch doctor herself, Kuroha, and her talking reindeer companion Chopper, who's afraid of humans. And be honest, is anyone trying to get this Grand Dusty right now? But here's where Kuroha informs Nami that she's been bitten by a bug called the Kestia, which was the reason for her high fever. Following her recovery, Nami then invites Chopper to her crew as their medic, but he's strictly against it due to the fact that he's a reindeer, and they don't fuck with us humans. However, Kuroha is alright with them taking him. Followed up with some backstory time, telling the story of the blue-nosed reindeer Chopper, who was abandoned by his fellow squad and even his parents, which left him destroyed. And so following that, one day he happened to come across the human fruit and consumed it, which as a result alienated him even more, causing him to get bullied out of the forest. And so with him being kicked out of the forest, he then tries to take the form of a human and blend in with the people. However, that didn't really work in his favor and ends up getting shot at, giving him no place he can call home. And so moving forward, here's when this one doctor finds him injured, named Hirolook, patching him up, which has a brother in tears from his kindness. Following that, here's when Hirolook gives Chopper his name, along with his iconic cat, telling Chopper that his future lies beyond the sea. Hero Look is then like, alright, well, good luck. Bye. Telling Chopper to live life as he pleases. However, Chopper then begs him to stay with him and take him in, but despite this being a hard thing for Hero Look to do, he doubles down and points his gun at Chopper, telling him to get that ass gone, which brings him immense pain. However, the reason for him doing this is because he only has 10 days to live, as revealed in this conversation with Kuroha, which Chopper happens to eavesdrop. Hero Look then goes on to explain to Kuroha, in just 2 days he'll be able to complete his research that he's been working on for 30 years. Kinda how long it took me to make this video. And he goes on talking about how he's gonna make the cherry blossoms bloom in this kingdom, which now cutting over to Chopper, with him overhearing that Hero Look is dying, he then recalls overhearing some people talking about this mushroom that can cure anything. And after doing some intense research, he then goes out on a search for this mushroom, fighting for dear life over here. But after fighting for the cause, Chopper manages to find the mushroom, bringing it back to Hero Look and making some mushroom stew with it like it's fucking Minecraft. Upon consuming it, Hero Look is then like, thanks, Chopper, I feel better already. Followed up with telling Chopper that he thinks he's gonna become a great doctor. Afterwards, Hero Look then gets excited talking about his research before heading out and telling Chopper, BRB. Hero Look then heads over to Kuroha, begging her to teach the ways of being a doctor to Chopper, which moving slightly forward in this flashback, Kuroha meets with Chopper, where he then tells her about the mushroom stew that he gave to Hero Look as a cure to his sickness, which has Kuroha delivering a very solid right hook, informing him that that mushroom was actually extremely poisonous, which has Chopper over here shook in disbelief. And so now cutting over to Hero Look, we then see him enjoying one last drink, which is some random failed formula he brewed up that is rather lethal. And with pouring this drink out, he then goes on telling Wapol a very powerful speech about death before self-destructing. So technically Chopper didn't kill him, right? However, with Chopper being at the scene, he then tries to retaliate against Wapol's army, but is soon stopped by Dalton, telling him it's not worth. And so moving forward, Chopper then begs Kuroha to teach him medical science so he can become a doctor that has the ability to cure anyone, which has her like, yeah, sure. Which now cutting back to the present, we now got the Blicking Pirates pulling up to the front door of the Drum Castle, which Luffy has outside to handle business. And of course, with Luffy being Luffy, he simply claps Wapol with ease, forcing him to enter his second phase, along with his minions. And while Luffy handles Wapol, we got Chopper over here handling the minions himself. However, somewhere in between, Wapol makes his way into the castle, coming in contact with Nami, and chasing after her on some ugly bastard shit. But here's when Luffy comes in for the save, clapping Wapol and sending him to space, and it seems the Drum Kingdom is all safe now, and there's no more threats. The Blicking Pirates are gone, hooray. And so moving forward, we now got everyone meeting up at Luffy's location, where we then have Luffy personally inviting Chopper to his crew as their healer. But because he's a reindeer, and is still traumatized by his past, Chopper is unable to say yes, but Luffy is like, shut your bitch ass up and join. So Chopper ends up joining the Straw Pirates as a doctor, on which Chopper tells everyone to get on his sleigh, taking the straws through the sky. And here we got Kuroha look out in the distance, smiling proud at her boy. And in the process of doing so, Kuroha then sets off a little something to send Chopper off, which is the very iconic cherry blossoms Hero Look once talked about, having it rain over the entirety of Drum Island, looking quite beautiful. And this is where we get the very symbolic and emotional scene for her and Chopper. And I swear something is off here, but I just can't put my finger on it. But anyways, we then have the Straw Hats sailing off with their newly recruited member Chopper, and with doing so, they then all celebrate. And now we're back on track to stop the Civil War in Alabasta and purge the existence of Baroku Works. On their journey there, they happen to encounter Mr. 2, who's unaware of their identity and pretty much befriends them on the spot, revealing his clone double free ability to them, which allows him to take form of anyone he pleases. And so upon leaving, Mr. 2 reveals his identity to the Straw Hats, and after finding out that he's with Baroku Works, they then create armbands as a countermeasure to verify if they're dealing with an imposter or not, also being a new symbol of their friendship. Moving forward, the Straw Hats arrive at Alabasta, at the outskirts of Nanohana, where Luffy does the classic and runs off on his own, while the rest focus on getting the disguises to blend in, getting all dripped out and shit. And wow, these animators and their camera angles, man. But anyways, with getting their disguises, they now head out to start the mission to save Alabasta. But first, they gotta find Luffy. And I guess not, because Luffy finds them while getting chased by Smoker. And as Smoker closes in on Luffy, this is when this one dude appears, saving him and his crew with his sick fire abilities. And soon after saving the Straw Hats, it's revealed that this is Luffy's brother Ace, which after a brief reunion, Ace tells the Straw Hats that he'll hold off the Marines, allowing them to get away. And so with them retreating, they make it back to the Mary. However, Luffy somehow gets lost in the process. And as he's roaming around, he encounters Ace once again, and they do a little bit of tomfoolery here, having a nice little arm wrestle. And I swear something is off here, but I just can't put my finger on it. However, after all that, Luffy and Ace decide to catch up, where Ace explains his goal to help this one pirate named Whitebeard become the king of pirates, which Luffy's like, wait, I'm the main character. How can that even be possible? Which after a little bit of walking, Luffy spots his crew on the Mary and boards it along with Ace, where Ace then goes on explaining his objective to hunt this one pirate named Blackbeard, who was a former member of the Whitebeard Pirates, however ditched the crew after murdering one of his crewmates. And so Ace is out here trying to avenge a fallen comrade. And based off intel, he was told that Blackbeard was last seen in Yuba, which is a small town in Alabasta, meaning they all have mutual destinations, with the leader of the rebel army being in Yuba as well. And so as they all head there, they have a nice little kampai, which soon after they take a detour, allowing Vivi to send off her duck Karu to deliver a message with her findings about Crocodile and Baroku Works to her father Cobra, who is the royal king of Alabasta. Moving forward, the Straw Hats, Vivi, and Ace arrive at the city of Erumalu, which is looking quite destroyed and deserted. Here's when Vivi gives the lore about Alabasta, going on about how there hasn't been any rain whatsoever for the past 3 years. And there's this one powder called Dance Powder, which is a cheat code to produce artificial rain. But the thing is, the world government ended up putting a ban on it, and so no one has access to it. But one day out of nowhere, there was a time when rain fell near the king's palace, which had the people questioning if the king is just letting them starve and dehydrate. And ever since that powder incident, the king has lost the people's trust after being framed. And pretty much the king haters converted into becoming rebels. Which following that, Vivi then hits us up with a double flashback story going on about her childhood friend Koza, who talked positively about making the city of Yuba a great place. Which now cutting back to the present, Vivi reveals that Koza is actually the leader of the rebel army. What an insane turn of events. Which what Vivi wants to do is just sit down and talk to him and say, yo, stop rebelling. And so after traveling a bit, Ace is like, yeah, I gotta go. Giving Luffy a piece of paper, telling him to hold on to it as that will be the key for them to meet up in the future. Moving forward, the Strads and Vivi now arrive at Yuba, which is looking quite abandoned just like every other place. Here they find this one old man named Toto, who recognizes Vivi from when she was just a child, telling her that he still believes in the king and that this rebellion is ridiculous. Toto then follows up by informing her that the rebel army has moved their base from Yuba to Katareya, also revealing their plans to settle things with the king once and for all with one final attack. Toto then pleads Vivi and the Strads to stop them before it's too late, and she's like, I got the main character with me, we should be good, before heading out. And so on their journey to Katareya, Luffy then stops and sits down like, nah, this ain't it, telling everyone why waste their time with the rebelling people when they could just defeat the final boss Crocodile, who is the root to all their problems. Following up with calling Vivi's plan to have no casualties some weak sauce, saying that people die all the time, it's normal. Upon saying this, Vivi gets very angry, slapping Luffy as a result, which Luffy answers back not discriminating, showing that these hands are E for everyone. Followed up with a powerful speech, which converts Vivi's mind right then and there. And so following that, Luffy then gets up like, yo, where's Crocodile at? Meanwhile, over at a very secret meeting, at a very secret place, we got the Baroque Works agents meeting up with their boss Crocodile, seeing his face reveal for the first time, where Crocodile discusses his final operation, Operation Utopia, which is pretty much to kill the king, take his throne, and acquire this ancient weapon called the Pluton. And so upon giving each individual agent an individual task, here's when Mr. 3 sneaks his way into the secret underground room, telling them to hold off the operation, notifying them that the Straw Hats and Vivi have escaped Little Garden. Crocodile is then like, wait, what? That wasn't you on the phone? Coming to the realization that now that the Straw Hats know his identity, they will most likely interfere with his plan. Crocodile then ends up sending Mr. 3 to the gulag, where he feeds him to his pet crocodiles. And wait a sec, isn't that his name? But then again, I could be wrong here, and these are alligators. I actually don't know the fucking difference, and I don't think anyone gives a shit. But anyways, Crocodile then orders his agents to kill the Straw Hats and Vivi on sight, putting an emphasis on preventing Vivi from meeting up with Koza. Moving forward, now cutting back to the Straw Hats, Vivi is now on board to target Crocodile, directing them to Rainbase, which is where Crocodile is set to be. And so after traveling a nice, long, and hard journey, they managed to arrive there in one piece. And oh shit, was that just a pun? However, with their arrival, they end up getting spotted by some Marines and chased by them. And would you look at that, they encounter Smoker and Tashigi once again. And so on their chase, Vivi points them towards Crocodile's casino, telling them that's where Crocodile's base is at. And upon splitting up, Luffy, Nami, Usopp, and Zoro get chased into the casino by Smoker, while the others head to different parts of Rainbase. And so upon entering the casino, they all end up running into the quote-unquote VIP room and falling through a trapdoor into a cheeky little cell, where they are then greeted by Crocodile. And so while Luffy's squad is stuck in the cell, elsewhere Vivi encounters Miss All Sunday, who is sent by Crocodile after being notified about the Straw Hats and Vivi's entry into Rainbase. And so this is where Vivi gets absolutely rolled here, but soon after we got Pelly trying to come in for the save. However, I don't think things really worked out in his favor and gets clapped by Miss All Sunday with her ability to produce limbs out of thin air. And by the way, Pelly's one of the 2 head guards of the Alabasta royal family with the ability to transform into a falcon. Pretty cool stuff. And oh shit, there goes Pelly's spine. And so upon defeating her little bodyguard, Miss All Sunday then brings Vivi back to Crocodile, and this is where Vivi tells Crocodile that he needs to die now, but unfortunately gets overpowered and forced to sit down. Here's when Crocodile then goes on explaining Operation Utopia to the Straw Hats and Vivi, which Luffy says, yeah, that's bullshit. Crocodile then says, well, time to head to Alubarna, which is the capital of Alabasta, by the way, where the royal palace is at. And before heading out, Crocodile decides to troll a little and throws the keys for the cell to the crocodiles, telling everyone in the cell that the room will self-destruct and submerge in water within an hour, pretty much just telling them good luck. Meanwhile, over at Nanohana, we got the king apologizing to the people about the incident with the stolen dance powder, taking accountability for it, following up with saying, in order to erase the incident, I could just erase everyone that knows, ordering his subordinates to kill everyone here. And so yeah, we got nothing but destruction. And would you look at that, it wasn't actually Cobra this entire time, but Mr. 2, who transformed into him, revealing that Mr. 4's team kidnapped the king. And so moving forward, with the water levels rising at the cell, Vivi decides to leave to get some help, where she soon after encounters Sanji, with the whole ass plan already set in motion to rescue everyone. Vivi then leads Sanji back to the cell, as it's now rapidly getting flooded with water. And so after rolling this one giant crocodile, it then spits out a wax ball, which spawns Mr. 3. And here's when Usopp comes up with the idea that they use Mr. 3's ability to create a key to open the cell. And after Sanji believes him a little, he then makes the key, allowing them to escape. And so with the water levels getting rather high, here's when the Straw Hats, along with everyone else, manage to escape the underground base to the surface, which Smoker questions Zoro's decision on saving him, which Zoro responds, hey, I'm just following Captain's orders. And so shortly after, some Marines approach the Straw Hats, and Smoker stands there like, fuck it, I guess I owe you guys one, allowing the Straw Hats to go, which has Luffy like, you know what, I kinda fuck with you, before heading off. And so with their escape, Chopper pulls up with this one large-ass crab, using it as a mount, and with the Straw Hats and Vivi boarding it, they now travel to Alubarna, which on their way there, Vivi ends up getting grapple hooked by Roadhog, on which Luffy goes on ahead and saves her, taking her place. And oh wow, it seems we got the finale between Luffy and the final boss, with Luffy calling him a fool, which makes Miss All Sunday giggle. And with her giggling, this makes Crocodile angry, revealing her real name Nika Robin, asking her if she wants to die, on which Robin just walks off like nothing ever happened, telling Crocodile that she's heading to Alubarna, leaving Luffy and Crocodile to settle their shit. Here's when Crocodile throws down an hourglass, telling Luffy that this fight will take no longer than 3 minutes. And oh shit, shit, it seems he was right, because he manages to get Luffy in some quicksand, leaving him to drown. Which, moving forward past that, we then got Robin coming in for the save, saving Luffy after hearing him yell that he wants some meat stuffed down his throat. Here's when she questions his reasoning for fighting, but really doesn't get an answer, because here's when Peldy arrives at the scene looking a little beat up, and so Robin dips, leaving Luffy in his care. Meanwhile, over at Alubarna, we got everyone and their mama heading towards it, simultaneously as the rebel army is. And as they are making their way to the west gate, they find it being guarded by a couple of Baroque work agents. And with their knowledge of Vivi being a high priority target, the Straw Hats all equip identical white cloaks to disguise their identities. And upon approaching the west gate, the Straw Hats then split up into 3 groups, with one going to South Gate, another group going towards the west gate, and the last group heading towards Southwest Gate. And with all the Straw Hats revealing themselves to the enemy, it is revealed that Vivi is not in any one of the groups, and is actually on the outside of the gates, planning on stopping the rebel army before they enter Alubarna. And so she stands in front of them, yelling at them to stop, but unfortunately her voice was too weak, and was unable to reach Koza. And so the whole army runs past her, not giving a single care in the world, absolutely trampling Vivi and her duck. And with her failed attempt to stop the rebels, the rebel army began the raid on Alubarna. Moving forward, Usopp arrives at Vivi's location, offering her a ride. But Vivi sees that he's acting a bit sussy here, demanding that he proves himself, which then Usopp shows off his armband, and she's like, I knew it! A must! And so with her figuring out that it's Mr. 2, because back on the Mary they all rehearsed to show the X underneath their armbands to show proof that they're legit, this is when Vivi makes a run for it, and as she's being chased by Mr. 2, this is when Sanji shows up with a couple of ducks, coming in for the save, allowing her to go on ahead to the palace, where she intends to talk to Chaka, who is the other head guard of Alabasta, with a backup plan to stop the rebellion. And so with Sanji going up against Mr. 2, we got the other Straw Hats going up against the other Broker Works agents, with Zoro and Nami going up against Mr. 1 and Miss Doublefinger, and Chopper and Usopp going up against Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas. And of course they all handle business, with Usopp and Chopper taking care of their threats, Sanji having a little bit of a hard time with Mr. 2, due to him exploiting his weakness to simping. However, he somehow manages to pull through, rolling Mr. 2, which now brings us to our last fights between Zoro and Mr. 1, and Nami versus Miss Doublefinger, which of course with Zoro being Zoro, he does his thing clapping Mr. 1, while Nami over here struggles a little bit against Miss Doublefinger. But after learning how to utilize her new weapon called the Klimatak, which was crafted by the legend himself Usopp, she manages to outplay Miss Doublefinger, ending her career. And so with the agents all taken care of, we now cut over back to Vivi, making it back to the palace, and talking to Chaka about her big plan to stop everything, going on about destroying the palace to get the attention of everyone, so that she could tell them the truth. And he's like, shit, alright. So with them setting the explosives up, ready to destroy 4,000 years of history, this is when Crocodile pops up being the party pooper, stopping the whole fireworks show, telling Vivi, what are you doing to my future house? Followed up with telling her that he killed Luffy. Crocodile then has the king brought to the palace and crucified, asking him about the whereabouts of the H weapon Pluton, which is a weapon capable of wiping out an entire island with one single shot. Following his interrogation, Crocodile then reveals in 30 minutes, a powerful cannonball is scheduled to hit the square where the royal army and rebel army are fighting, which has Vivi like, how could you? Well, we all know Crocodile don't give a fuck, and asks the king where he can find the poneglyph, which put in this desperate situation, he agrees to guide him to it in hopes of him chilling out. This is when the royal guard appears, attempting to do something to stop Crocodile, but surprisingly enough, they were too weak to handle him. And so shortly after, Koza makes his appearance, where Vivi tells him about Crocodile's plot, which upon being exposed to the truth, Crocodile is like, ha ha ha. Get pranked, kid. Leaving Koza standing there in disbelief. And so with Koza here, the king then tells Vivi and Koza to save everyone before the cannon sets off in about half an hour. And so they both head out to do so, with Chaka holding off Crocodile for them. And so upon their arrival on the battlefield, Vivi tells the royal army to surrender, and Koza follows up explaining the situation to his people. But as he's giving his speech, a member of Baroque Works, hidden within the royal army, shoots Koza, which has everyone going, what the fuck? Before resuming their war. Here's when Crocodile then gets a hold of Vivi, before dropping her into her demise. And what's that in the air? Oh my god, it's the main character! And he ends up saving Vivi from her fall, challenging Crocodile for a rematch. And this time around, the way Luffy counters Crocodile's Logia Devil Fruit, which pretty much grants him the ability to be immune to physical attacks, is by getting himself wet. Because we all know water is super effective against sand. And so while Luffy's handling Crocodile, the other Straw Hats meet up with Vivi, who informs him about the cannon that's about to go off. And so again, this information, they all then split up to search and stop it. Which now brings us back to the fight with Luffy and Crocodile, where Crocodile orders Robin to leave with the king and get to the poneglyph, which on her way there, she happens to bump into some marines on the way, which she simply claps with ease. And during her little exchange with Tashigi and the marines, we learn that Robin acquired her 79 million berry bounty at the age of 8 years old, in this one incident where it's reported that she has sunken 5 marine battleships on her own. And oh shit, our main character takes an L again, getting sucked dry before getting dropped off, which soon after, Crocodile makes his way towards Robin. And so moving forward, Luffy ends up getting rejuvenated by some water, allowing him to get back up and go after Crocodile once again, which on his search, he happens to bump into Tashigi, who points him in the direction that she saw Crocodile go, and upon traveling in that direction, Luffy ends up finding this one secret passageway, which leads to the poneglyph. Meanwhile, at the poneglyph, Robin, Crocodile, and the king make it all here, where we find out that Robin is the only person in the One Piece world who has the ability to decipher and read poneglyphs. And so with reading the poneglyph aloud to Crocodile like she's in fucking English class or some shit, she tells him that this poneglyph just goes over the history of Alabasta and contains nothing about the ancient weapon Pluton, which was what Crocodile was hoping for. And so following that, Robin is then like, well, you've been a pretty good business partner, and I think it's time we part ways because we reached our goal, which their agreement was for him to bring her to the poneglyph in return of getting information about the Pluton. Crocodile then calls Robin's bluff about the information on the poneglyph just being about history and shanks her, which soon after Luffy arrives ready for another rematch, and this time around instead of using water, he uses his own blood as lubrication coordination for his hands to give Crocodile a good fisting. And in the process of doing so, he sends his ass to space. And oh shit, it seems there was enough to defeat him. Which with now the final boss defeated, we still got the side mission to take care of, which is to search and stop the cannon before it goes off. And would you look at that, Vivi and the Straw Hats managed to pinpoint it, with it being located in a clock tower. And so with the power of teamwork, they end up boosting up to the top with some crazy coordination and managed to get Vivi onto the clock tower and successfully cuts the cannon's fuse, which it seems like everything is deja vu now. But not really, because here's when Vivi realizes that the cannonball has a timing device built into it. And so luckily for her, here's when Pelly flies in, come in clutch, taking the cannonball to the sky with him, and oh shit, it just blows up. And so following Pelly's very noble sacrifice, here's when it starts to rain out of nowhere all over Alabasta, grabbing the attention of everyone on the battlefield. And with everyone silent, taking a moment to admire the rain, here's when Vivi gets the attention of all of them, telling them to stop the fighting, which has everyone like, shit, you're right, this shit dumb. And yeah, with that, it seems everything's all resolved now in Alabasta, with no more rebel army, and Crocodile getting arrested by the Marines, with Tashigi personally stripping Crocodile from his title of being one of the 7 warlords of the sea, because he's been very naughty. And so moving forward, with all the fighting stopped between the rebel army and the royal army, here's when the rebels bring up seeing the king attack Nanohana, which then Igura makes his appearance saying, yo, guys, I'm actually alive, bringing a boy along from Nanohana, who confirms that he saw Mr. 2 transform into the king to manipulate the royal army. And they're like, oh, that all makes sense. And so moving forward once more, we now have the king bringing Luffy safely back to his crew, and shortly after heading out with Vivi to talk to the people, officially declaring the end of the civil war. And it seems Alabasta now has infinite reign following Crocodile's defeat. And so with everything now all peaceful, we then get this very nice intermission period with everyone just enjoying themselves. And of course, we gotta have the mandatory bathing scene with Nami delivering to the boys, peeping on her and Vivi and killing them as a result. And wait a sec, what was Vivi's father doing peeping on his daughter? But anyways, following that, we then learn that Luffy's bounty has been increased to 100 million berries, and Zoro manages to get his first bounty of 60 million berries after defeating the strongest male agent of Baroku Works, Mr. 1, who was a notorious assassin from the West Blue. And so moving forward to the night of the Straw Hats heading out, they happen to invite Vivi to join them on their journey as a member of their crew. However, she tells them, yo, give me some time to think. And so with the Straw Hats heading back to their ship, they encounter Bonclay, previously known as Mr. 2, waiting for them. And he goes on telling them that since they're no longer enemies, they're friends now, right? Also telling them that he's been holding down the ship for them while they were away. And as they are just chilling over here, they are then suddenly attacked and surrounded by some Marines, where we get to see the familiar faces, Full Body and Django. And oh my god, Hina can stomp on my book! And as they're getting attacked, here's when Bonclay's crew arrives to pick him up, which has Bonclay like, it's been real guys, before heading off to attack the Marines for them to allow the Straw Hats to escape. What a true legend. However, here's when more Marines come in, and as they're approaching the Straw Hats, here's when Vivi arrives waving them off, along with her ducky, telling them that she's made a decision to stay on Alabasta. However, is very thankful for everything they've done. She then follows up with asking if they ever meet again in the future, if they could be friends. And since the Marines are nearby, they didn't want to say anything that would make them suspicious of Vivi being affiliated with them. And so with that said, they then all raise their fists, showing off their mark of friendship in this very iconic scene, on which Vivi and Karu follow up and do the same, solidifying their Nakama-ship, which is definitely a real word. And so moving forward, the Straw Hats manage to make their escape from the Marines, and here's when Nico Robin spawns in their ship, asking to join their crew, but she has no other place to go, and states that she intended on dying in the collapsing secret underground area where the poneglyph was. However, Luffy ended up saving her in the end, which I guess makes her his responsibility, which then Luffy is like, alright, welcome on board, telling his crew she seems nice. And so here's when we get a little bit of Robin's background, where we learn about her main objective to find the real poneglyph, which is said to have information about the true history of the world, also known as the Void Century, which is the 100-year time span in history that has little to no records in existence. Following this, Robin introduces herself as an archaeologist and is also very confident in her assassination abilities, which truly makes her a very trustworthy ally. Soon after that, we then cut over to Pelly over here visiting his own grave like, what the fuck, I died? And moving forward, we then got the Straws going on some very canon adventures where we definitely get to see some very canon stuff, like everyone should know who this character is. And so following that little arc, as the Straw Hats are sailing, they find themselves encountering this one pirate ship falling from the sky. And this is when Nami takes a look at her log pose, and it's seemingly glitched, with it pointing straight up, which Robin informs her that it caught the magnetic field of a sky island. Here's when Luffy takes a moment to loot the fallen ship, on which he finds a map of a place called Skypiea, which I think is the sky island that Robin is talking about. Just maybe. And so as they're inspecting the map, here's when the Moria pirates pull up on them, with Moria very angry at them for taking his loot. But just then, here's when 5 colossal titans appear out of nowhere, which leads the Straw Hats dipping the area and heading straight to Jaya, which Robin happens to yoink an internal pose which leads to it from the Moria pirates. And with the sky island currently out of reach for them, this seems like a very valid move for them to gather intel and get a tutorial on how to get to it. So moving forward, the Straw Hats managed to make it to Jaya, with Luffy, Zoro, and Nami heading out to town, as well as Robin, who wanted to go solo, while the rest stayed back on the ship to watch over the Mary. And so with heading into Jaya, they entered this one bar for some information about the Sky Island, which upon asking, this has the whole bar laughing, with the Sky Island just being a silly old myth and an ancient legend to them. Which soon after, Bellamy of the Bellamy Pirates mentions this one thing called a knock-up stream, which is a current set to knock up ships into the sky. Shortly after explaining all of that, Bellamy then proceeds to bully Luffy and Zoro, who doesn't retaliate whatsoever because violence is bad. And so with Nami dragging them out of the bar, they soon after encounter this one dude, who I'm not entirely sure is important to the story whatsoever, but he goes on rambling about the future era of pirates, which he then closes off his rant, telling Luffy he hopes he can make it to the Sky Island before walking off. Moving forward, we now got the Strats all returning back to the Mary, where Robin returns with some new drip, along with a map of Jaya with an X marked on it, saying that it will lead to this one guy named Cricket, who may know a thing or two about the Sky Island. And so upon arriving at the destination, they find this one palace, which turns out to just be a wooden cutout, so haha, get trolled. And upon searching around, Nami discovers this one book titled Nolan the Liar, with some lore about this one dude named Nolan, who is apparently a liar. And pretty much this book goes over Nolan's adventures about him getting to this one island which had the City of Gold. And after trying to bring the king to it, the City of Gold seemingly disappeared, and there was nothing but a jungle present in front of them, which has the king very angry, sentencing Nolan to death for lying and blue balling him. And so shortly after reading the story, the Strats then encounter Cricket, where they question him about the Sky Island. He responds telling them that he once knew a man named Nolan who confirmed its existence, however got a reputation of being a liar, and with him being a distant relative to him, he still gets shit to this day, going on how he was tragically kicked from his old crew for talking about finding the City of Gold, which has Luffy like, so the Sky Island. And with Cricket being in the helping spirit, he decides to give a hand to the Straw Hats and informs them on how to get to the Sky Island, which is through the method of using a knock-up stream. He then goes on explaining the science behind it, and that it's a current that appears 5 times every month, telling them that the next current is tomorrow. Following that, he then explains the dangers of it, telling them that timing is key, and if they fail, they die. And so they then have this one nice feast before heading off, where Cricket goes like, oh shit, you'll need a southbird to get to the current, by the way, because regular compasses don't work here, unfortunately. And so the Straws then head out on this night, going bird hunting, because only in anime you can see clearly while it's pitch black. And while they go on ahead and do that, this is when the Bellamy Pirates decide to invade Cricket, clopping Cricket's cheeks, along with Masura and his brother Shoujo, who are also on this island, which I kind of forgot to mention because they were just there. But anyways, with raiding Cricket, they then take all of his gold and dip, which upon the Strats capturing a south bird, they return back to Cricket after all the madness, where Cricket is like, yo, I kind of got robbed here, but it's all good. However, Luffy is like, nah, I ain't letting this slide. I'm running across the entire island to hunt the Bellamy Pirates, with them leaving a mark behind, snitching on themselves that they did it. And so moving forward, Luffy manages to make it back to the bar where Bellamy is, and upon clapping his shit in one tap, leaving a dent in his skull, he then takes the treasure back, making his way all the way back to Cricket, returning it to him. And so upon returning it, Cricket is like, I appreciate it, brother, sending the Strats off with a cute smile as they now set sail to the knock-up stream, using the South Bird as guidance. Alongside the Straw Hats, we got Masura and Shoujo accompanying them, and oh god, it's getting a bit cloudy here, and the weather's getting a little rough. But upon doing some complex calculations of the currents for the Straw Hats, Masura and Shoujo set them up in this one whirlpool, which as they're entering it, the Blackbeard Pirates pull up, which is led by that one dude from earlier, looking to grab Luffy and Zoro's bounty. However, before he knows it, the knock-up stream climaxes, which causes the Blackbeard Pirates taking the wrong angle here, and taking the fattest L, while the Straw Hats manage to make their way up at a 90-degree angle, because physics is just a myth. And so as the Straw Hats are making their way up, we got Cricket over here sitting back and relaxing, watching them from a distance, and oh shit, they make it to the top, above the clouds, which shortly after their arrival, they end up getting attacked by this one crazy man, in which Gonfall the Sky Knight pulls up saving them, and introducing himself to them, along with his bird-horse hybrid creature called a Pegasus. And so upon exchanging a few words, Gonfall is quite impressed with them making their way up here, using a knock-up stream, and gives them this one whistle, which he says upon blowing it, he will come to their aid before flying off. And so after navigating through the clouds a bit, the Straw Hats arrive at Heaven's Gate, so I guess they're dead now, which here they encounter Amazon the Gate Inspector, who's quite the mighty fine gilf, which he tells them that it will cost 1 billion XDOL per person to enter, and due to this being a foreign currency, Nami says, yo, we got no money, which has Amazon going like, well, you can pass anyways, which as they are proceeding through the gate, they end up getting grabbed by some lobster claws, and dragged through the gates at Mach speed, going up, what's this, Snake Way? Which on their way up, they happen to bump into this one sign, which says Godland Skypiea, so I guess they made it to the right place, where we now have them all enjoying themselves in the clouds for a bit, where they soon after encounter Konus and her father Pagaya, welcoming the Strats to Skypiea. Here's when Nami over here gets fascinated with this one Sky Island exclusive vehicle called the Waver, and she happens to go crazy with it, going off on her own, where the rest of the Straws get brought on a nice little tour by Konus and her father, getting a nice rundown of the concepts of dials, which are essentially seashells with various abilities, and it's pretty much the foundation of the technology on Skypiea. And so as Luffy's group is enjoying a nice dinner, here's when Sanji wonders where Nami went, which Konus gets worried that she might have possibly went to the forbidden area called Upper Yard, which is where the god of Skypiea lives, aka the Kami-sama Enel, and it's said that anyone who sets foot in Upper Yard never comes out alive. And oh wow, Nami actually did go over there, looking for some treasure. However, on her search, she witnesses this one dude getting divine punishment right in front of her, and shortly after hearing some people in the forest discussing about illegal entrants that have infiltrated Skypiea, aka the Straw Hats, and this was all because Amazon snitched on them, setting them up for failure. So upon hearing this, Nami then rushes back to her crew to notify them that they're in danger. However, it seems that she was a little too late because the Skypiea police approached the Straw Hats at the Mary, confronting them about their illegal entry. However, they do have a chance to get away if they pay 10 times the entrance fee, which amounts to 70 billion XDOL, which is the equivalent to 7 million berries. And with Usopp telling Nami about the price, Nami's like, I bet, crashing her waver into one of the officers, telling them, you got me up. Konis is then like, yeah, you all probably getting the death penalty now, which quite shocks everyone. Nami then tries to apologize like, whoops, that was just an accident by the way. However, it seems her apology wasn't enough, and they end up getting attacked by God's guards, which leads to Luffy clapping a bunch of them, while Sanji and Zoro clap the rest. And with doing so, this now marks the Straw as second-degree criminals, and they get told that they're going to be judged by the priest of Upper Yard, aka the people who work directly under Enel. And so following this event, Usopp then asks Konis for directions back to the Blue Sea, which he says that they can go to Cloud End, that is located far east of Skypiea. And so as the Straw Hats are heading out, Luffy is like, wait a minute, we need food. And so going along with Sanji and Usopp, they make it back to the house with Konis and her father, which has Zoro, Nami, Chopper, and Robin board the Mary. And as Chopper pulls up the anchor, here's when the largest lobster claws return, picking up the Mary and dragging it through the clouds. And this lobster happens to have God written on it, which something tells me that this lobster works under God. And so as the Mary's getting dragged away, here's when Luffy's group notices it, and Pagaya tells them that they're probably being dragged to the sacrificial altar located northeast of Upper Yard as offerings to God. Pagaya then follows up telling Luffy's group that traveling on the Milky Road is the only way to it, and Konis volunteers to guide them to a ship so they can get to it. And upon arriving at the ship, Konis then points them to exit number 2, assuring them that that will lead to the Milky Road, which will eventually bring them to Upper Yard, where the rest of the crew is. However, Luffy notices that Konis has been shaky ever since she left the house and calls her out on it, which has her like, oh shit. Konis then breaks down in tears, apologizing, and says that she was the one who called the lobster on the Mary, giving the reason that she and her father were threatened with death if they didn't comply and leading the Straws to the place of judgment. Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp are then like, bro, why didn't you just tell us this shit in the first place? Telling her that they got her back. And it seems judgment is coming around early for them, with this one beam of lightning striking straight down at them, which definitely did some environmental damage, leaving a gaping hole in the middle of nowhere. And hear me out. However, here's when Gonfall comes in for the save, saving Konis because all the Straws can handle themselves, and tells them that this one is on the house before bringing Konis to safety. Following that, Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp then board the ship they were brought to, heading straight towards Upper Yard to save the rest of the crew. Upon their arrival, they bump into some wacky obstacles and encounter 4 different entrances labeled with 4 different types of ordeals, which Luffy decides to just go with the ordeal of balls because he loves balls. And upon selecting that gate, they are then surrounded by a bunch of balls. Surprisingly enough, soon after they encounter one of Enel's priests, Satori. Meanwhile, now cutting over to the other Straw Hats on the Mary, they all happen to make it to the sacrificial altar, where Zoro, Nami, and Robin decide to head out to explore, leaving Chopper behind to watch over the ship. And as they search the island, Nami and Robin find it odd how there's soil on the sea clouds, with Robin deducing that Upper Yard was originally on the ground, and figured out that this is the other half of Jaya that was missing, that was ripped and risen up to the sky by a knock-up stream, which excites Nami because she's confident in this place being where the City of Gold is. And so now cutting back to the Mary, as Chopper is watching over it, here's when one of God's priests, Shura, approaches him, and with Chopper panicking, he blows the whistle, sending an SOS to Gonfall, who is casually just watering his flowers, but sadly gets interrupted in the process, and who knows if he'll be able to make it in time, because it seems Chopper is really gonna die here. But would you look at that, he actually does come through, saving him, and taking on Shura in a 1v1. And oh shit, he takes an L as a result, which leads to Chopper, Gonfall, and his Pegasus getting dunked into some water. But luckily for them, they end up getting saved by a bunch of friendly Southbirds, and I guess they're all safe now. And so now cutting back to Luffy's group, after struggling a little bit with their threat, they managed to pull through with the power of teamwork, clapping him real quick before proceeding forward on their ship towards the sacrificial altar. And as they are heading over there, we then cut over to the Shandia, which is a tribe on Skypiea, discussing how Gonfall was the former god of Skypiea before being overtaken by Enel, and they plan on launching an attack on God's shrine to end Enel's career, cause they had enough of his shit. And so they all then head out to Upper Yard to do just that, getting into a whole ass war against the priest in the process. Moving forward, Zoro's group manages to make it back to the Mary, and just as they do, Luffy's group coincidentally gets there as well shortly after. And so upon being reunited, they all then gather around the campfire to not sing the campfire song unfortunately, but talk about their experiences here, as well as discussing searching for the City of Gold. And so after coming up with a little game plan, Nami pinpoints the location of the City of Gold with some insane IQ plays, and because they just can't leave their ship here, they decide to split into 2 groups for this mission. But before heading out, they of course had to dance around the fire with some furries, while Gonfall shows off his really cool dirt. Moving forward to the following morning, the Straws manage to get the Mary off the altar and onto the Sea of Clouds. And as they are sailing, Luffy, Zoro, Chopper, and Robin go on foot, heading south for the goods, leaving the others behind to look after the Mary, also having Gonfall on board, where he then goes over the lore of Skypiea on how it was once a peaceful place before Enel's army took over Upper Yard 6 years ago, which led to the Shandia trying to fight back for the land ever since. Meanwhile, not cutting to Enel, we got him ordering his priest to handle Gonfall, as well as the Straw Hats accompanying him, followed up with talking about starting a survival game with everyone on Upper Yard, and predicts by the end of it, there will be 5 people remaining. And so he just chills here waiting for everything to play out. And so now cutting back to Luffy's group, as they are having a nice walk through Upper Yard, they happen to get attacked by this one large snake, which causes them to scramble and all split up to different locations. And with being separated from one another, here's when Luffy encounters Wiper, who's a part of the Shandia, telling Luffy to leave the land because it belongs to his people, but then just says fuck it, I love violence, and tries to kill Luffy. And so as Luffy is having a very intense battle with him, he then falls into this one pit, which brings him to this one underground ruin. And so with that, Wiper then just says, well, I guess I gotta move on to Enel now. And so now cutting over to Chopper's POV, he ends up getting spotted by this one priest named Gadatsu, which has Chopper running for his life. But then he's like, wait a sec, my opponent is actually stupid. It takes him on this one fight like it's Dragon Ball Z or some shit, and oh well, he actually wins, sending Gadatsu through the ground. And so following that, we then cut over to Robin over here doing her research, and discovers that this place is an ancient city called Shandora, stating that she's supposedly at the center of the city. And upon digging further into it, quite literally, she figures out a lot of the upper parts of the city have been covered up by the Sky Island's clouds, and that there's much more to explore below the surface. And so with her heading towards the shining light at the the end of this tunnel, she finds herself at the legendary city of Shandora, also known as the City of Gold. And upon searching around, she finds this one poneglyph which reads, "Hold our true motive in your hearts and not speak of it. We are the ones who weave history with the sounding of the Grand Belfry," which has Robin coming to the conclusion that the golden bell here at Skypiea might contain the real poneglyph and complete her life. Meanwhile, cutting back over to the Mary, we now got Enel confronting everyone on it, zapping the fuck out of Sanji, and shit, I think he might be dead. Following clapping Sanji, he then decides to tase Usopp as well, cause why not? Which afterwards, Enel then goes on explaining his little survival game, telling Nami and Gonfall that he considers himself a participant as well, and that the winner will be able to claim all the goods from the City of Gold. After explaining all that, he's then like, well, good luck, before dipping to bully some other people in the upper yard. Which shortly after Enel leaving, we then got Satori's brothers arriving at the Mary, looking to avenge their bro. And so this is when Gonfall and Nami prepare for combat and attempts to defend Sanji and Usopp, who are French fried, and oh wow, they actually managed to handle the both of them, with Nami taking out the last one by sitting on his face, ripping some mean-ass explosive diarrhea on him, ending his career. And so following that, Gonfall then tells Nami, well, I gotta go, heading out, leaving Nami on her own to fend for herself. However, shortly after, this is when Konis and Pagaya arrives at Nami's location, bringing a Shandian girl along named Isa. And so with picking those three up onto the Mary, they then continue sailing, where they end up encountering this one snake, which in the process, we learned that Luffy didn't actually fall into an underground ruin, but actually inside this one snake's belly. And with him fisting his insides, this irritates the snake, riling it up, leading Nami retreating on the waiver, with Isa out of fear. Meanwhile, now cutting over to Zoro, he ends up encountering this one Southbird, which happens to take him into the sky. And with that one snake after Nami, now attacking the Southbird, this results in the Southbird dropping Zoro, landing in the location where Wiper, Gonfall, and the priest Ohm are gathered at. Here's when Wiper is like, if you all are gonna get in my way, I guess I'll have to take you all out. Taking on Zoro first, leaving Gonfall to handle Ohm. And so as they're all fighting, we then got some divine soldiers pulling up to the scene, as well as some Shandians, and this is where Zoro finds Chopper looking a little dead, which makes him quite angry. Shortly after, we then got Nami and Isa arriving on the waiver, which has some divine soldiers going after them, but their efforts were cut short, with Zoro and Wiper working together to fend them off. And soon after, Wiper is then like, oh nah, we have outsiders here, attempting to blast Nami, but here's when Gonfall comes in clutch, saving both Nami and Isa. I don't understand what he was trying to do, trying to kill Isa in the process, but anyways, as Gonfall is trying to head towards safety, here's when the giant snake pops up once again, gulping them all whole, where they then meet up with Luffy. And so now cutting back to the fight, this is when Ohms decides to cage everyone in, attempting to leave no survivors. However, Zoro's like, shut your bitch ass up, one tapping him with his very epic Yakuhachi Pondo Ho, and yeah, I think this man is dealt with here. And so moving forward, now cutting back over to the Mary, we now got this one divine soldier letting Konis and Pagaya know about Enel's big plan to eradicate Skypiea and everyone on it, which shortly after exposing his plan, here's when divine judgment comes down on him, and in the process of it closing in on them, Pagaya pushes Konis to safety so that she wouldn't be hit in the crossfire. And so with thinking that her father is now melted, she then feels obligated to let everyone know in Skypiea about Enel's devious plans. And so heading into town, she tells everyone about it, which no one believes her, but with the power of the Tuck no Jutsu, she manages to convince everyone and has everyone evacuating towards the Blue Sea. And so now cutting back to all the combat, here's when Enel says fuck it and strikes everyone near the beanstalk with his lightning, causing everyone to fall straight down into their demises. And in the process of falling, everyone in the snake sees an opportunity to escape, with the snake having its mouth wide open. And so Nami tries to have everyone hop on her waiver. However, just as they're gonna escape, Luffy and Isa get slapped by the exhaust of the waiver, leading Nami being the only one to escape the snake. And so with everyone falling straight down, they end up in the ancient city of Shandora, where we have the animators hitting us up with some very necessary angles. And as Nami and Gonfall are having a nice little conversation, they soon have to reunite with Zoro and Robin, who are carrying along an injured Chopper. This is when Enel pulls up, shocking the snake for fun, and with Enel's arrival, here's when everyone teams up against him, while Nami hides in the back with Chopper. And oh, there goes Gonfall. And oh god, Robin too. And oh my, yo, Zoro, you too? And we even got Enel showing no respect out here, shoving his big toe in his face, which now leaves Wiper as the last man standing. And oh shit, it seems he actually handled him. And the final boss has been defeated by someone other than the main character. And oh, wait, never mind. I forgot these villains can self-res themselves like this. And so with Enel getting back up, he simply just handles Wiper with ease, toasting his shit. And oh wow, Nami's all that's left. And so with being the last one remaining, Nami then asks Enel to join his team, believing in his vision to reach the dream world. And Enel is like, yeah, sure, follow me. Leading Nami into this one cave, flexing his arc maxim on her, saying that with this ship, he'll be able to reach the endless birth, whatever that is. And so now cutting over to Luffy's POV, we have him as well as the others escaping the snake, where he soon discovers that all of his comrades have been rolled. However, Robin is still conscious, telling Luffy that Nami went with Enel, also explaining his plan to destroy Skypiea. Following that, Isa then says she knows where Nami and Enel went because she could feel both of their voices moving on the island with some crazy superhuman abilities. And with having this power, she then guides Luffy to them. And so moving a little forward, Luffy manages to arrive at Enel's location, where they soon have to throw hands. And due to the fact that Luffy's body is made out of rubber, Enel's attacks don't affect him, because if you ever play Pokemon, electricity is ineffective against rubber, because rubber is definitely a type. And so with Enel shitting himself, he then boots up the Arc Maxim, taking off with Luffy and Nami on board. And Enel then goes on explaining the Arc's ultimate feature is already in motion, which is called Deathpiea, which I don't know if you know how to math, but it's death plus Skypiea together. And upon activating it, we then got this black smoke squirting out of the Arc, overcasting the entirety of Skypiea. And oh wait, it's not smog, but cumulonimbus clouds, which pretty much what Enel plans on doing here is doing a full map attack with it. However, Luffy then gets impatient with all this damn dialogue and resumes his fight with Enel, copying him over and over, and with getting tired of Luffy's shit, he then melts a huge ass lump of gold onto Luffy, pushing him off the arc and having the gold anchor him all the way to the bottom. And so once again, we got Nami the last one standing. And so here's when Enel charges up his Kamehameha, but upon launching it, here's when Usopp makes his magical appearance, coming in for the save just to get toasted once again. Nice. Shortly after that, Nami then gets on her waiver, attempting to escape with Usopp, and this is when Sanji makes his magical appearance, kicking Usopp to the waiver so they can flee the arc safely. And so now we got Sanji dealing with the final boss himself. And oh shit, he gets toasted once again. And so following his defeat, here's when the arc experiences a bit of turbulence due to Sanji actually messing with something in the control room, which makes Enel frowny face and teleport there to fix the problem. And within that time span, here's when Usopp returns to pick Sanji up and bring him to safety where everyone else is, which is below the beanstalk. Which, moving forward, we now cut over to Luffy looking for his rematch against Enel, running up this giant ass beanstalk with sheer determination. And as he heads up there, Nami then tells her crew to head back to the Mary while she goes on ahead to get Luffy, which as Nami makes it to his location, offering him a ride back, he's then like, nah, I need to ring this gold bell, dog, with the intention of having Cricket hear it down below to confirm its existence to him. And so here's when Nami comes up with the plan to help Luffy, sending a message to the people below using a leaf, telling them to slash the beanstalk to angle them towards the arc. And with the efforts of Zoro, Usopp, and Wiper, they manage to tumble over the beanstalk, allowing Nami and Luffy to travel on the waiver, heading directly towards Enel. And as they are being targeted by him, they end up hitting one of the sickest ramps of all time, where Enel says, fuck it, I'm Goku, pulling out a whole ass spirit bomb on them, but Luffy's like, no you're not, cause I'm the main character, and giving the spirit bomb a good fisting, nullifying the entire attack, which now has Enel shivering in his boots, and entering his big daddy transformation. And to think he did all of that for nothing, cause Luffy simply just shoves his golden ball in his mouth, defeating him, and performing a Wapol combo and ringing the golden bell in the process, which was the first time it's been rung in 400 years. Truly an exceptional way to end a fight. And with doing so, Cricket hears down below like, oh my god, the city of gold is real. And so following Enel's defeat, we now have everyone rejoicing with Luffy's W. Furthermore, Gonfal gets his status of god back, and Pagaya is like, oh shit, I'm still alive. We then have the Skypeans and Shandians celebrating the end of the war, and while they're all enjoying themselves, we got Enel over here back on his feet, on his arc, casually making his way to the moon. Moving forward to the following morning, we then have everyone gathering around the golden bell, where they discover this poneglyph ingrained into it, which upon reading it, Robin discovers that it was signed by the legend himself, Goldie Roger, and it reads, I made it here, I will guide this text to the ends of the earth, which brings Robin to the conclusion, by gathering and connecting the information from multiple poneglyphs scattered across the world, that is what the real poneglyph is. And so moving forward, with all the business settled here, the Straw Hats are all now setting sail, saying their goodbyes to Conus and Pagaya, and with their assistance, they are led to the exit, which has them falling straight down. But this is when Conus comes in clutch, calling in an octopus balloon for them to allow them to safely descend all the way to the blue sea. Upon making their landing, it turns out RNG wasn't on their side, and they managed to drop directly into a marine base, which, not gonna lie, this filler arc was very seamless, and I would even argue it being anime canon. But after having some wacky adventures in this base, they all managed to get together and figure out an escape plan, which has them flying over the walls and into some real canon territory. And so moving forward, the Straw Hats managed to arrive at this one archipelago called Longland, with some very interesting Pokemon and this one old dude named Tonjit. Shortly after their arrival, here's when the Foxy Pirates arrive, wanting to challenge Luffy to a Davy back fight, which, not fully understanding what it is, Luffy accepts anyways. And pretty much what it is just a game where you put your crewmates at stake with every individual competition. And so in the process, the Straw Hats lose Robin and Chopper after losing 2 consecutive minigames. And for the final game, here's when Nami proposes that if they win this final match, they get Chopper and Robin back, but if they lose, all 5 of the remaining Straw Hats will have to join the Foxy Pirates, which has Foxy agreeing to those terms without hesitation. And so now going into the main event, the final match, the final game, we got Luffy versus Foxy. And after having the fight of the century, Luffy surprisingly comes out on top, and yeah, it seems like the Straw Hats are all now one happy family again. And so moving forward, we now got the Straw Hats sailing off with the objective to recruit a shipwright, aka a shipbuilder. And so as the Straw Hats encounter their next island, here's when they encounter this one dude who Robin recognizes, which is soon revealed to being the Marine Admiral Aokiji, which he's over here like, alright, I'm just gonna take a nap, but soon after gets up like, never mind, I think I'm gonna do my duty as a Marine and capture you naughty pirates. Out here flexing his devil fruit ability on them, turning Robin into an ice statue, and just as he's gonna finish her off, here's when Luffy comes in for the save, and he too gets turned into an ice statue, which leads to Aokiji going like, well, I'm bored, before walking off, telling Luffy he's sparing his crew as a way to cancel out the government's debt to them for taking out Crocodile. And so moving forward, we now got the Strats following their log post, which leads them to this one sea train station where they meet Kokoro and her granddaughter Chimney. Upon arriving here, Kokoro informs them that they're heading towards Water 7, which is a well-known shipyard, and is probably the best place for them to find a shipwright. Kokoro then gives them a map along with a reference letter, telling them to deliver it to a guy named Iceberg who can fix their ship up, which has the Strats like, wow, this is epic, before making their way towards Water 7. And so moving forward, they make it to Water 7, and with them docking their ship, we got Luffy, Nami, and Usopp heading out to search for Iceberg, Chopper and Robin casually walking around, where Robin walks past this one dude in a mask, whispering in her ears CP9, which has her flabbergasted and ditching Chopper in the process, which leads to Chopper and Sanji go on a big search for her, and Zoro just chilling back on the ship, protecting it from invaders, like these fellas right here who who are a part of the Frankie family, a group known to being ship dismantlers, and bounty hunters, which of course Zoro handles with ease. And so now cutting back to Luffy's group, we got them exchanging all the gold they collected on Skypiea into cash, which equates to roughly 300 million berries. And with them arriving at the Galileo Company shipyard's entrance with the reference letter, here's where they meet Iceberg, who is the mayor of Water 7 and is the president of the Galileo Company, where they also meet his colleagues Khalifa, Polly, Lucci, and Kaku, who's apparently packing more nose girth than Usopp. And so with Kaku taking a moment to run over to the Mary to inspect it for damages, Luffy's group then has a nice tour around Dock 1, where Usopp gets mugged in broad daylight and kidnapped. But I don't think anyone has noticed. And so moving forward, we now have Kaku making his way back, notifying Luffy and Nami that the damage on the Mary is too catastrophic for repairs, with the explanation that the ship's keel has sustained irreversible damage, and that it may be in the best interest to buy a brand new ship, which has Luffy and Nami over here like, damn. And so with this one worker bringing their briefcases to them and Usopp nowhere to be found, they open them and find them completely empty, where then this one dude tells them that they saw Usopp getting carried away by the Frankie family not too long ago, which upon getting the details about the Frankie family's hideout, both Nami and Luffy head out, regrouping with the other Straw Hats, and arriving at the hideout where they find a very crippled Usopp on the ground, which has Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper determined to avenge their fallen comrade, pulling up to the Frankie family's base, crashing their whole party, their whole base, and everyone in it. Following their complete domination, here's when Luffy reflects and comes to terms that the Mary is pretty much a done deal, telling Zoro and Sanji, I think it's time to let it go, as Chopper is over here reviving Usopp. And so now moving forward, we now have all the Straw Hats rendezvousing at the Mary, except Robin of course, and Usopp wakes up ashamed that he lost the money. However, Luffy tells him to look on the bright side and that they still have 100 million berries left, updating Usopp that they can use that money to buy a bigger and better ship to replace the Mary, which has Usopp like, please say psych, in disbelief that Luffy has decided that quickly to replace their ship. Luffy then straight up tells him that the Mary can no longer be repaired, which gets Usopp visibly frustrated at Luffy, which gets Luffy frustrated that he's frustrated, telling him that if he dislikes his decision so much, why don't he get his bitch ass out of this crew? Which has Usopp going like, shit, peace out losers, telling Luffy that he wants to run a 1v1 with him for possession of the Mary. So fast forwarding to 10 o'clock on the dot, we then have one of the craziest and most insane battles of all time, with Usopp dropping nukes on our main character. However, that was all for nothing, because Luffy absolutely kills him right here, which then following that, we now got Luffy crying over here along with his crew, telling them, well, I think it's time we ditch the ship, leaving Usopp behind with it. And so moving forward to the following morning, Nami arrives with news, telling them that Iceberg got shot last night, and he's now in a coma. And with this being the mayor of Water 7, this has the whole town panicking. And so upon being fed this news, Luffy then heads out with Nami to get to the bottom of this, while Sanji heads out with Chopper to search for Robin, because they have their priorities straight, searching for the waifu. But you guys all gotta admit, Nami's best girl, right? Anyways, with all of them heading out, we now got the Water 7 intercoms going off, warning everyone that the Aqua Laguna is gonna strike a little after midnight, which is an annual storm which rises the tides of the sea immensely, flooding the lower parts of Water 7 as a result. And so moving forward, now cutting over to Luffy and Nami, Frankie happens to pull up on them, yelling at them for destroying his base and family, also revealing that he already spent the 200 million berries, which after figuring out that he was the one responsible for beating up Usopp, this is when Luffy gets a little bit fired up, fighting Frankie as a result. Meanwhile, cutting over to Iceberg, he manages to regain consciousness and snitches on the two people involved in the incident where he got shot, giving the description that it was a big man with a mask and a tall woman, which is heavily hinting at Robin. And with it hinting at Robin, everyone in the room is like, it must be the Straw Hats then! And so moving forward, the Galileo Company employees pull up on Luffy as he's fighting Frankie, confronting him about Robin attacking Iceberg last night, which upon hearing this shocks both Luffy and Nami, and Frankie over here in the corner gets to know that he's not getting enough screen time and just causes mass destruction for the fun of it, allowing Luffy and Nami to escape. So moving forward, Luffy then swings his way into the Galileo Company's building in search of Iceberg. Upon exchanging a few words with him, Iceberg confirms that he saw Robin with his own eyes, pulling out a Glock, demanding to see Robin. However, unaware of her whereabouts, Luffy then dips the scene along with Nami. And so moving forward, we now have the Straws having an emergency meeting without Sanji because he's elsewhere doing his own thing, and with having this meeting, they come to the conclusion that things may get worse as they anticipate Iceberg will be assassinated tonight. And so with the night striking, the Straws post up at the Galileo Company's building, preparing to confront Robin. And soon after, we then got this explosion going off at the entrance, where Robin and her partner then entered the building, on which they then approach Iceberg, explaining the reasons for keeping him alive and their plans to secure the blueprints of the ancient weapon Pluton that he possesses. Also in this conversation, it's revealed that Robin's bounty was actually established by the world government due to the fact that she's the only person capable of deciphering poneglyphs, which is a major threat to them. And pretty much that whole incident where she sunk 5 marine battleships was just a cover-up story they made up. And so following this nice conversation, here's when Iceberg finds out the people he worked closest with are all part of the secret organization Cypher Pol, with all of them being a part of the CP9 faction. And essentially what Cypher Pol is an organization that works close with the world government, mainly responsible for doing a little spying and assassinations. And so shortly after this big reveal, here's when all the Straws manage to make their way into the room, telling Robin, yo, I think you should rejoin us. But she goes, nah, I'm good, before heading out and having the CP9 agents hold off the Straws for her. And so here's when Lucci decides to flex on them real quick, transforming into quite the big fella, yeeting Luffy into another dimension and punting Zoro into the abyss. And as a result of all this fighting, the Galileo Company's building begins to collapse and gets engulfed in flames. And with everything going to shit, here's when the CP9 agents tie up Iceberg and Polly, leaving them to burn as they make their escape, setting their sights on targeting Frankie for the blueprints. And so moving forward, now cutting over to Usopp's POV, we got him getting kidnapped by Frankie to lure the Straw Hats in for his revenge. And this is where we get hit up by Frankie's backstory, with this one group known as Tom's Workers, led by the legendary shipwright Tom, who was responsible in building Gold D. Roger's ship. And in the process of this whole flashback, we have Tom's Workers creating the Puffing Tom, which is the sea train that saved Water 7 by connecting Water 7 to other islands. And at the end of this whole flashback, we got Tom time sacrificing himself, allowing Frankie and Iceberg to go free without having to be sent to Enies Lobby. And so now cutting back to the present, after not skipping much of the flashback, we now got the CP9 agents breaking into Frankie's secret underground base, clapping his cheeks and taking him away along with Usopp because he's a part of the Straw Hats. And so moving forward, now cutting back to the Galila Company's building, we got Nami and Chopper safely escaping the building, with Chopper rescuing Polly and Iceberg in the process. And this is where Iceberg apologizes for falsely accusing the Straw Hats for Robin's actions and goes on explaining Robin's true intentions of her wanting the Straw Hats to leave the island safely by turning herself into the government and assist them in the retrieval of the blueprint before being executed. Upon hearing this, Nami is relieved that Robin didn't betray them after all and rushes to let the rest of the crew know. However, before heading off, Iceberg informs them about the sea train that Robin will be boarding, departing at 11 p.m., with Enies Lobby being its destination, which is an island off limits to anyone that isn't government personnel. And after the sea train takes off, this will be the final one that departs, with the Aqua Laguna coming real soon, meaning the Straw Hats have 30 minutes to clutch up and catch that train. So with time ticking, Nami and Chopper head out to search for Luffy and Zoro with the assistance of the Galila Company, and in the process of searching, Chopper and Nami decide to split up, with Nami rushing towards the train station and Chopper continuing the search. Which now cutting over to Sanji's POV, he spots Frankie and Usopp being dragged along by the CP9 agents and tails them all the way to the sea train. And with the sea train departing, here's when Nami arrives, a bit too late, which Polly pulls up as well like, damn, that's tough. Shortly after, this one random dude pops up out of nowhere, giving Nami a letter left behind by Sanji, informing her that he has boarded the train with Robin on it and that Frankie and Usopp are on board as well, giving her a transponder snail for communications. And so this has her going like, well, I guess it's time we all go to Enies Lobby. And so moving forward, the search for Luffy and Zoro continues, and after an insane game of hide and seek, they manage to find the both of them, and I guess they're all reunited now, preparing to rescue Robin. And so moving forward, we now got Kokoro and Iceberg approaching them, offering to use their alternative sea train called the Rocket Man, so they can go after Robin. And with an offer like that, of course they take it, and so forming an alliance with the Galila Company and the Frankie family, the Straw Hats now head out on the Rocket Man, with Kokoro as the conductor, bringing along her granddaughter and her pet rabbit along, cause why not? And so on the ride to Enies Lobby, here's when Nami gets a call from Sanji, where they update each other about the situations, with Nami telling Sanji about Robin's true intentions, and Sanji telling her that he rescued Usopp and Frankie. Following that call, we now got Usopp ashamed of himself for his past actions with the crew, and still stands by his decision of leaving and walks off. And just as Sanji and Frankie get spotted by this one Marine, this is when the one and only Sogen King arrives to save the day, which is definitely a brand new character to the series. And upon his arrival, Sanji and Frankie definitely don't recognize this dude, and they end up devising a plan with him to save Robin. And so moving forward, Sanji, Frankie, and Usopp then head out to execute their plan, detaching one of the train's cars, eliminating some potential threats they had to deal with, and when doing so, they then fight their way towards Robin, with Sanji and Frankie doing all the fighting, while Usopp heads directly to Robin to try to convince her to escape with them. And so moving forward, we now got Sanji rolling this ramen dude and approaching the car with all the CP9 agents. And just as he approaches them, we got Frankie over here clapping his level 1 threat, landing directly in the car where Sanji's at. And shortly after his appearance, we then got Robin and Usopp entering the room, where Robin yeets Usopp back at them against their whole idea of getting her back. But this is when Usopp throws down a smoke bomb, grabbing Robin in the process, not taking no for an answer, and bringing her into another car, quickly detaching it from the train, allowing them to escape the CP9 agents. However, Khalifa then uses her thorny whip to drag them back, and honestly, she could use that whip on me. But this is when Frankie takes one for the team, shoving the CP9 agents back, allowing the Straw Hats to escape with Robin. But it seems that was all for nothing, with Bluno appearing right behind Sanji, like, look at what my devil fruit can do, before proceeding to give Sanji and Usopp a little beating. Afterwards, Robin then willingly goes back with Bluno, leaving Usopp and Sanji defeated in this one car. And so moving forward, we now got the Straw Hats on the Rocket Man, catching up to where Sanji and Usopp are, and picking them up in the process. Here's when everyone then gets together, formulating a plan on how they're gonna navigate Enies Lobby, with Polly having knowledge about the area, having been there before. And so with their arrival, Kokoro then announces to everyone that they have indeed arrived at Enies Lobby, introducing them to the Gates of Justice, giving them a nice casual tour around. But here's when Luffy says, fuck it, I'ma head in, flying straight into the core of the action. And so with Luffy entering Enies Lobby, having the time of his life, we then also have the other Straw Hats, the Frankie family, and the Galila Company making their way through as well. And with Enies Lobby being invaded, here's when the chief of CP9, Down, puts the whole place on high alert, followed up by having a nice little business meeting with his subordinates, even bringing Frankie and Robin in to talk some shit. And so now cutting back to our main character, we now got him approaching the Tower of Justice, which is the headquarters of Cypher Pole, where soon after Bluno appears at his location, lecturing Luffy about how trespassing here is a no-no, which Luffy says, shut your bitch ass up, having a rather intense fight with him, and eventually going tryhard mode, entering Gear second for the first time ever, boosting his stats a little, and oh damn, it seems he absolutely obliterates Bluno. And so following that, we then got Luffy continuing his search for Robin, yelling directly at her to come out and stop hiding, and she pops out like, oh hey there, telling Luffy to go back, and that she doesn't want to return to the crew, and just wants to die. But here's when the other Straw Hats manage to make their way up to Luffy, confronting and persuading Robin to come back to them in this one very legendary scene with all the Straw Hats lined up. But this is when Spondam appears, flexing his authority with the ability to launch a Buster Call with this one golden snail, which has Robin going like, NANI? Triggering her PTSD, because this was the very thing that wiped out her hometown, Ohara, 20 years ago. Which pretty much how things went down is that the world government found out that the scholars on Ohara were secretly learning how to decipher poneglyphs, and as a result, they called the Buster Call in, which essentially eradicated the entire island with a barrage of cannonballs. But in the midst of the attack, Robin's mother Nico Olivia sends her off with a giant named Sal to escape, with her final words to Robin being to live on. And using Sal's raft, she manages to escape the island as a sole survivor, with the help of Kuzan, aka Aokiji, who said, I'm feeling nice today. And so following that, this is where Robin gets her first bounty of 79 million berries, and with her trying to ask around for shelter, every time she found a place to stay, the homeowners would always snitch on her in the end, which ultimately led her to having severe trust issues and leading down a darker line of work in order to survive. Which now cutting back to the present, we now got Robin telling the Straw Hats that if she stays with them, she'll eventually become a burden and they'll one day abandon and betray her. And acknowledging who Robin's true enemy is, Luffy then orders Usopp to shoot down the world government's flag, and by doing so, this symbolizes an act of war against the world government. And following that, Luffy then lets out a war cry, prepared to take on the whole world, which has Robin rather moved. And so here's when Luffy demands that Robin says that she wants to live, which seeing how much effort they put into getting her back, she finally breaks down, delivering this very legendary scene, shouting that she wants to live and to take her along to the sea with them, which has the Straw Hats like, I bet. And from being moved from the Straw Hats' actions, this is where Frankie then sides with them, also saying fuck the world government, burning the blueprints to the Pluton that he had stored inside of him right in front of Spondom. Shortly after, here's when the drawbridge which connects the main island to the Tower of Justice drops down, thanks to the help of the Frankie family and the Galileo Company, but unfortunately midway, it gets halted. And so here's when Kokoro calls in, telling Nami to get everyone to hop on the sea train, coming in at full force, and with having full faith in her, Luffy grabs everyone hopping off the platform, simultaneously as Frankie free falls down towards them after being pushed down by Spondom. And would you look at that, they all managed to catch the train, Frankie included, and use the bridge as a nice little ramp to get to the other side, over to the Tower of Justice, which is one step closer to Robin. And you see the reason why Robin can't do anything right now, by the way, is because she has Sea Stone handcuffs on, and pretty much the Sea Stone material restricts her from using her Devil Fruit ability. So yeah, the more you know. And so with the Straw Hats arriving at the tower, Spondom then orders his agents to do whatever is necessary to take care of them, ordering Lucci to escort and protect him as he brings Robin to the gates of justice, so he can send her to the Slammer. Which now cutting back to the Straw Hats, we then have them being greeted by the CP9 agent, Fukuro, revealing that one of these CP9 agents in this building has the key to Robin's handcuffs. However, it doesn't tell them who exactly, so they'll have to fight every single agent in order to find out. And out of the 5 keys they possess, it's only one that works with Robin's specific set of cuffs. And with Robin being brought to the gates of justice as they're speaking, they have a time limit to get the key over to her. And so with Fukuro explaining all this, he then dips afterwards, telling them good luck. And so the Straw Hats and Frankie then head out to do their thing, splitting up to collect the keys like Dragon Balls, with Frankie encountering Fukuro, Nami encountering Kumadori, Usopp encountering Jabra, Sanji encountering Khalifa, and Zoro encountering Usopp's long-lost brother, Kaku. And so, cutting over to Usopp, he notices Jabra just sleeping there, with the key just laying there out in the open, which as he approaches it, a chicken pops out of nowhere, which has Jabra waking up and transforming into a second form right away, skipping the foreplay. And so as they're fighting, here's when Zoro and Kaku fall from the upper floor to where they're at. And upon Kaku getting roasted for his goofy appearance, he then goes a little crazy, slicing the Tower of Justice into 2, and somewhere in between that rampage, Usopp manages to troll a little, and somehow by accident, he cuffs himself to Zoro with Sea Stone cuffs, which he intended on using against the Devil Fruit users. And it seems they're in a little bit of a dilemma now. But here's when Chopper arrives, given the objective to get the number 2 key to unlock their cuffs. And apparently each pair of handcuffs at the Tower of Justice is labeled by a number that corresponds with a certain key. And unfortunately, Kaku and Chopper happen to not have the key they're looking for. And so Chopper heads out to search elsewhere. Meanwhile, now cutting over to Nami, she seems to be struggling against her opponent and ends up getting saved by Chopper, getting the number 3 key in the process. And just as they acquire this key, this is when Sanji rains down from the sky after getting clapped by Khalifa, because fighting waifus is his weakness. And so Nami then decides to step up and take her on, while Chopper stays back to take on Kumadori, who happens to get back up after Chopper's attack on him. And so as the fight between the two of them escalates, Chopper ends up locking Kumadori in a fridge, where we then have Frankie making his way into the room, fighting his opponent Fukuro. And upon seeing the fridge right there, Frankie tells Chopper, yo, pass me some cola. And upon consuming it, this juices Frankie up, allowing him to clap Fukuro with ease, acquiring the number 4 key. Which now cutting back over to Chopper, Kumadori ends up escaping the fridge, putting Chopper in a bit of a pickle, on which he then resorts to overdosing on some pills called Rumble Balls, which transforms him into this one very scary monster, and clapping his opponent with ease, yeeting him miles away. Which now cutting over to Nami's fight, we got Khalifa over here deciding to just casually get naked and bathe in front of Nami as she gets real soaked up and weakened by her Devil Fruit ability. And oh my god, the thighs! So as their fight progresses, here's when Chopper barges into the room, still going berserk, and picking up the bath that Khalifa was once in, tossing it out of the room, really wasting that Gamer Girl bath water. However, Sanji manages to get lucky and has that water landing directly on him, getting the true Gamer Girl essence on him, along with the effects of Khalifa's Devil Fruit nullified. And so now cutting back to the action, we got Nami deciding to pop off here, clapping Khalifa real quick, which shortly after, Frankie makes his appearance, telling Nami that the number 2 key that Khalifa possesses is very important for Zoro and Usopp's cuffs. And with taking it, Nami then hands over 2 other keys to Frankie, which are keys number 3 and 4, telling him to hurry and get these over to Robin. And so now cutting back to our main character, we got him bumping into Chimney, where she then shows him the way of the undersea passage, to which he saw Robin and Spondom head down. And with the gate being locked shut, this is when Luffy goes gear 3rd for the first time, absolutely obliterating the gate, and now Luffy's a temporary chibi, as that is indeed the downside of using gear 3rd. And so moving forward, we now got Luffy catching up to Robin, which Spondom then sends out Lucci to handle him, leading them to having a very intense battle. And now cutting back to Nami, she manages to make her way to Zoro and Usopp, freeing them from their cuffs, which now has Zoro going up against Kaku, while Sanji makes a flashy appearance that goes up against Jabra. And so with everyone and their mama heading towards Robin, we got Sanji clapping Jabra with his iconic Diablo Jambang, and Zoro over here unlocking his Bankai, clapping Kaku, which then following that, they then both head towards Robin, like everyone else, given some written directions left behind by Chimney. And so now cutting over to Robin, being dragged along by Spondom, here's when he accidentally invokes the Buster Call on Enies Lobby, and with accidentally activating it, he then accidentally notifies everyone on the island as well, causing everyone to panic and rushing to escape the island. So as Spondom is approaching the Bridge of Hesitation with Robin, edging closer to the finish line that is the Gates of Justice, we got Frankie over here making it to Luffy's Enies location, which with Luffy holding off Lucci for him, this allows Frankie to catch up to Robin, freeing her from her cuffs, as Usopp is over here abusing aimbot and sniping all the Marines in the area. This is when Lucci says fuck it, slashing a hole in the wall to drown everyone who has entered the underwater passage, which it seems to be very successful, with the water overwhelming them. But just as things are looking dire, this is when we find out that Kokoro is apparently a mermaid, and manages to drag everyone to safety onto a marine battleship that Frankie and Robin managed to hijack. And so with everyone all reunited now, for the most part, this is when the Buster Call escalates, with the whole goddamn island getting rolled by cannonballs. And really all that's left is for Luffy to finish his fight with Lucci, with Frankie and Usopp over here yelling in the corner to hurry his goofy ass up. And so as Luffy is fighting Lucci, we got the other Straws playing COD Zombies, fighting endless waves of Marines, resulting in Zoro's UBCD getting absolutely rusted by this one random Devil Fruit user. And this was one of the OG source from the beginning. But with all the fighting continuing, this is when Luffy gets up like, look at what I learned, pulling out his trump card, the power of friendship, putting every ounce of his being in this one attack, sending Lucci flying. And oh shit, I think he's GG'd here. And so following Lucci's defeat, this is when the Marines decide to do a little trolling, targeting the Straw Hats escape vehicle, or I mean ship, which it seems they have nowhere to escape, with all of Enies Lobby being erased by the Buster Call. But this is when suddenly Luffy and Usopp hear the voices in their head telling them to jump into the sea, which you know what, it's always smart to trust the voices. And so they all follow through and jumping into the water, where we then have the Mary spawning, and was actually the one speaking to them telepathically. And so with everyone boarding it, Robin thanks everyone for saving her as they head out to freedom, with Robin of course getting her sweet revenge on Spondo, folding him into a whole ass pretzel and snapping his spine like a goddamn glow stick, which was some rather fine ASMR. And so with the Straw Hats making a safe escape, we also got the Frankie family and the Galileo Company safely escaping the island as well on the sea train. And man, were the Straw Hats really in a pickle back there. If it wasn't for the Mary, who knows what would have happened. And oh god, it's burning! And it seems the Straw Hats happened to come to terms that this is the end of the line for the Mary, with it just absolutely falling apart as they were sailing, and believes it's appropriate to set it to rest in this one legendary ceremony where they say their goodbyes to it. Which then following that, we then got Iceberg and the rest of the Galileo Company arriving, bringing them back to Water 7, with Zoro staring at his Yubishiri like, damn, where did I go wrong? But anyways, with everyone now back at Water 7, Frankie brings up what he spent the 200 million berries on, which is this rare material called atom wood, essentially an indestructible material, which he plans to build his final ship and his dream ship with. And with working on it, he then asks if the Straw Hats will accept it and take it in as their own, which in the process of working on the ship, here's when some Marines pull up to Water 7, breaking into the building where the Straw Hats are, on which Luffy recognizes the Vice Admiral, Garp, who is his grandfather. Garp then updates Luffy about Shank's whereabouts, informing him that he has become one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea, also revealing that Luffy's father is none other than the infamous leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon, who's listed as the world's worst criminal, and was also the one responsible for saving Luffy from Smoker back at Loguetown. Which moving forward past that, Luffy then reunites with Kobe once again, as well as Helmoppo, which I'm sure you all remember. And here's when Kobe informs Luffy about the second half of the Grand Line, the New World. Which then following that, the Marines then all head out, leaving the Straw Hats alone, and they then have a nice little pool party, with nothing but some slice of life fun. But just then, this is where Aokiji pulls up on Robin, asking her if she finally found a place she can call home, after all these 20 years. And when she's like, yas, bitch, which then Aokiji heads off like, very well then. And so moving forward, here's when Kokoro informs the Straw Hats that the next island that the log leads to is Fishman Island, which soon after being given this information, this is when they get notified that their brand new ship is ready, as well as news that their bounties have been risen following their raid on Enies Lobby, with Luffy's being juiced up to 300 million berries, Zoro up to 120 million berries, Robin up to 80 million berries, Usopp up to 30 million berries, which I'm sure they recognize him, and cutting to the other Straw Hats getting their first time bounties. We got Sanji getting a 77 million berry bounty, Nami getting a 60 million berry bounty, and Chopper getting a whopping 50 berry bounty. Not too shabby. And of course, outside the Straw Hats, we got Frankie getting his first bounty of 44 million berries. And with him now having a bounty, this is when the Frankie family begs the Straw Hats to take Frankie with them, because it would be a danger for him to stay in Water 7. And so with being presented their brand new ship called the Thousand Sunny, which is looking even more breedable than the Mary, this is when they managed to get Frankie to join their crew by stealing his panties, also giving him a sprinkle of CBT, which has him going like, well, since there will be a time you'll need repairs, I guess I'll come along. And so just as they get him on board, here's when Zoro and Sanji rush back, telling everyone that Luffy's grandpa Garp has returned to capture them. And so with that, they then set sail with their new shipwright Frankie, as they're now being tailed by some Marines, leaving Usopp behind of course, because he has made it clear that he wanted to leave the Straw Hats, which has Usopp like, guys, I think you forgot someone. And with the Sunny getting further and further away, he then breaks down apologizing for his actions, getting down on his goddamn knees, which has Luffy like, here's a hand, bro, pulling Usopp back on the ship, and it seems they're all reunited now, escaping the Marines by blasting off on the Sunny, which has Garp like, that's my grandson. And so with evading the Marines, the Straw Hats now set sail towards Fishman Island. And as they do that, we now cut over to Ace finally catching up to Blackbeard to get his revenge. This is where Blackbeard reveals his dark fruit abilities, allowing him to absolutely suck everything in existence into a black hole. And yeah, we get this one final epic clash with the narrator telling us that this fight will lead to triggering a great event, which is yet to come. And I wonder what that means. And so moving forward past that, we then got the Straw Hats entering a snow biome once again. And wait, did we just make a lap back to Drum Island? Oh wait, never mind. This is a filler arc. Skip this shit! And so moving forward, we now get the Straw Hats sailing the seas, where they then discover this one barrel, thinking it's some treasure. And upon opening it, a red flare shoots up into the sky, which has Robin wondering if this is a trap set up to target them. Shortly after, the Straw Hats then enter the foggy Florian Triangle, where they encounter this one spooky ship that has everyone shaking in their boots, with this one skeleton on it singing yo ho ho ho. And oh my god, I think they found Sanji. Santa. But it seems like it was a false alarm, with the skeleton being named Brook, and he goes on telling his backstory of him being once a musician for his crew before they all just got wiped out one night, resulting in Brook's revive fruit going off, reanimating him as the last man standing. Which then following explaining his life story, here's when Nami pulls up with the mirror, and oh my god, his reflection doesn't show. Which Brook explains the reason for that is because his shadow was stolen, and if he gets exposed to sunlight, he will disintegrate out of existence. And so shortly after explaining all that, this is when this one ghost suddenly appears on the Sunny, and after feeling a rumble within the ship, this is when they find out that they've been closed off by a gate in the back of their ship, and really only have the option to explore what's in front of their ship, which is this one island that happened to spawn in front of them, which later they find out that it's not an island, but a rather large ship. And so with them arriving here, here's when Brook questions if they picked up the drifting barrel on their way here, which Luffy mentions, oh shit, we did. And with telling Brook this, he explains that that was a trap set up by this ghost island called Thriller Bark, and that they've been tailing the Straw Hats ever since. And with that, this is when Brook decides to ditch them, casually running across water, and with no other choice but to explore, the Straw Hats all then enter Thriller Bark as well, with Luffy, Frankie, Zoro, Robin, and Sanji forming one group where they end up fighting a bunch of zombies after their bounty money, while Chopper, Usopp, and Nami form another group heading into a different direction where they end up reaching the mansion, getting welcomed by this one dude named Hogback along with his mate Sindri. And with being brought in for some dinner, Chopper recognizes Hogback as he is a very well-known surgeon and asks if he can see his lab. However, Hogback is completely against it, looking quite sussy out here. And so following that, we then get another classic bathing scene with Nami where, oh god, she ends up getting pinned down by an invisible entity, covering her mouth in the process. And I swear this is the start of a different type of anime. But with hearing her making some odd noises, here's when Chopper and Usopp arrive in the room, which really I don't think their appearance was all that necessary, with Nami handling the threat by hitting the invisible entity with a nut shot and having him flee through the window after having his balls popped. And so elsewhere, this is where Hogback meets up with the invisible entity, which happens to be this one dude named Absalom, along with Perona, who was actually the one responsible for creating the ghost back at the Sunny. And here's when they just all discuss what they're gonna do with the Straw Hats bounties, scheming behind their back. And so moving forward, Absalom then gathers a bunch of zombies to start the night raid, with the objective to capture the Straw Hats. Joining him, he also got Perona and Lola, who's a zombie obsessed with making Absalom her husband, which learning that he has chosen Nami as his waifu, Lola then sets her sights on eliminating her. So now cutting back to Luffy's group, upon defeating the zombies, they then get educated that the boss of the island is a dude named Moria, and he happens to be known to stealing people's shadows and using them to revive zombies, on which Robin actually recognizes him as one of the 7 warlords of the sea. And so upon their entry into the mansion, they end up fighting through a bunch of zombies, where Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy end up getting kidnapped in the process and sucked dry from the shadows by Moria in order to strengthen his zombie army. And with acquiring Luffy's shadow, he actually intends on using it to revive his most powerful zombie, located in this one special freezer. And so upon reaching it, he then shoves Luffy's shadow into the large zombie's titties, having it come back to life after 500 years. And with being revived, the zombie then yells for some food before heading out on a nice little rampage, because he happened to inherit some of Luffy's personality from his shadow. So now cutting back to Nami's group, they happen to get attacked by Absalom, and as a result, he abducts Nami, disappearing with her so he can have a nice little wedding, because she is indeed best girl. And so moving forward, now cutting to Brook over here, confronting his samurai zombie to reclaim his shadow, he ends up having a really epic battle with him. However, unfortunately gets rolled. But this is when Zoro and Frankie come around the corner to back him up, and with Zoro being the master swordsman, of course he takes on this fight in a nice 1v1, and you all already know Zoro, he don't take L's, slapping the legendary samurai Ryuma and acquiring his legendary katana called Shisui. And oh yeah, Brook gets his shadow back afterwards. Moving forward, we think all the Straw Hats outside of Nami, returning back to the Sunny, where they find out they've been robbed. Also finding Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji's bodies just laying here after having their shadows stripped. And so with all of them reunited, they then update each other about their situations, with Nami being kidnapped for a silly little wedding, and how Brook mentioned to them that he was actually a part of that one crew that left Laboon waiting back at Reverse Mountain, pushing forward for the past 50 years so he can see Laboon again, which has Luffy like, crazy how things come full circle like this. And so moving forward, the Straw Hats then head out for their counterattack to reclaim their shadows before the sun rises, and to also save Nami. In the process of their little raid, this is when Luffy's zombie falls on them, separating Luffy, Chopper, and Robin from the rest of the group, which has Robin and Chopper bumping into Hogback, while Luffy goes on ahead to face Moria in the freezer, having trouble against his Kagebushi no Jutsu. And so now cutting over to Zoro's group, they happen to find the way into Perona's room, where they encounter Perona herself, with eyes built like a whole-ass me character. And with them entering the room, she then sends out her ghost on attack mode, which apparently causes depression through contact. However, it doesn't really affect Usopp, because if you really think about it, you can't get depressed if you're already depressed, right? And so with Usopp being immune to her attacks, he then tells the rest to go on ahead while he takes her on. And with having a bit of a struggle against her, Usopp figures out that this isn't Perona's real body, and happens to find Perona's real body in this one room. And when doing so, he then does the wombo combo of shooting cockroaches at her and bonking her with a very real and not prop toy hammer whatsoever, knocking her out. And so moving forward, we then got Hogback telling his backstory of him being a massive simp and cuck for Sindri, and upon her death, digging up her grave to revive her, which has Chopper disgusted in using his talents for such a thing, and no longer respects him as a doctor. This is when Luffy's zombie drops by, crashing into Chopper in Robin's room, and damn, it seems Hogback gets hit in the crossfire, which honestly, I think the zombie's doing more harm than good for the villains if you ask me. But anyways, now cutting over to Nami's very consensual marriage, just as lip contact is about to be made, here's when Nami snaps back awake, dodging that shit, which then shortly after, Lola makes her appearance, crashing the whole wedding, cause she can't stand the NTR. But with Absalom absolutely tired of her shit, he claps her real quick, which has Nami like, oh hell no, ain't no way you did that to my girlfriend Miss Piggy. And oh wow, it seems Lola is actually alright. And so Nami heads out, leaving her to do her thing, as she now searches the mansion for some treasure, which upon inspecting it for a bit, she finds out through these zombie chipmunks that Perona is currently taking the Sunny along with his treasure as they're speaking. And so with returning to the Sunny, she finds Perona out here loading the ship, ready to leave. But this is when this one big ass dude appears behind her, holding a Bible, who happens to be a guy named Kuma, and is also one of the 7 warlords of the sea. And with him making his appearance, he then does a little magic trick, making Piranha disappear. Which then following that, Kuma then questions Nami about Luffy having an older brother, which she's like, yeah, his name is Ace. And upon giving this information, Kuma is then like, very well then, heading off, leaving Nami wondering if he's after Luffy, and heading to the battlefield to let everyone know. Upon her arrival, she finds that most of the Straw Hats are going up against Luffy Zombie, being controlled by the man himself, Moria. And oh god, it's a fucking massacre! And so now cutting over to Luffy over here, he happens to be chasing Moria through the woods, however finds out that he's been chasing a clone this entire time. How very baka baka. And so shortly after, here's when he bumps into the Rolling Pirates, who all had their shadow taken by Moria, and they're like, wait, are you the main character? And with Luffy being their final hope, they then shove endless shadows down Luffy's throat, and with him making his appearance on the battlefield, coming in for the save and taking on his own zombie, we find that those shadows actually pack-a-punched him, allowing him to give his zombie some work and absolutely annihilating it before exhausting all his energy, which it seems that was all for nothing, with his zombie getting right back up, leading the Straws to reassemble again, and with the power of teamwork, they managed to pull through and clap it once more, which afterwards Moria then says, oh, you thought it was over, absorbing every single zombie shadow onto the bark, and oh god, he's looking very terrifying. But this is when the main character steps up once again, forcing every shadow out of Moria's body by having the entire mansion fall on his tummy. And with doing so, all the shadows then return to their original owners right on time as the sun comes out. And so following that very intense battle, Luffy is then out of commission once again, with Kuma over here at a distance, spectating the whole thing, which he then gets a call from the world government to exterminate everyone on the bark to cover up Moria's massive L. And so he gets to business, taking off his gloves and flash stepping towards everyone. And he's like, alright, well, I think it's time we wrap things up here, creating this very large paw bomb using compressed air and compressing it into a smaller size before releasing it, which it seems to do quite a bit of damage to Thriller Bark along with the people on it. And oh shit, I think everyone's dead. Kuma then tries to capture an easy bounty, but the legend himself Zoro steps up, out here defending his captain, and upon having a little exchange, he finds out that Kuma is actually a cyborg, which Kuma then corrects him saying, actually, I'm not a cyborg, I'm an incomplete human weapon created by the world government called the Pacifista, developed by the Marine's head scientist, Dr. Vegapunk. And following that, Zoro then proposes a deal to take his life in return of allowing Luffy to be left alone. And this is when Kuma is like, oh wow, I kinda fuck with you now, saying that he won't harm Luffy, but makes an alternative deal to extract all of Luffy's pain from his previous fights and have it be transferred directly into Zoro, which Zoro is like, yeah, sure, I got this. And upon taking a small sample bite of the pain, he spazzes out, nearly rolling him, which then following that, Zoro then requests to bring this to another location, mentally preparing himself before taking it all up the butt. And in the process of taking it, here's when everyone wakes up following Kuma's nuke, and Sanji happens to locate Zoro over here, standing in blood, which then Sanji questions him about what happened with him and the Warlord, on which Zoro delivers the very iconic and legendary scene, telling him that nothing happened. And so following all that, we now got everyone celebrating Moria's defeat, and here's when Luffy informs Brook that Laboon is alive and well and is still waiting for him, on which with hearing this, he is then overjoyed with the news, followed up with asking Luffy if he could join his crew, after being asked by him initially when they first met. And so with Luffy accepting him in, Brook is now the 9th member of the crew, revealing that he previously had a bounty of 33 million berries, but that was when he was alive. And so moving forward, before all the Straw Hats set sail, Charlotte Lola, the captain of the Rolling Pirates, who is a shadow connected to the Miss Piggy zombie, gives Nami her mother's Vivi card, telling her if they ever run into any trouble, they can use this to get to her, which pretty much what a Vivi card does is that it will always head in the direction of the initial owner. And this is when Luffy remembers that he actually got one from Ace a while back, and upon pulling it out, he finds that it's burning, which Lola then informs him that the Vivi card can also represent the owner's well-being, meaning that Ace's life is in danger. And so with that said, the Straw Hats then all set sail, saying their goodbyes to everyone they met along the way, and Nami worried if they should check in on Ace. But Luffy's like, he's fine, don't worry. And with that, they then all have a drink for the newly recruited member, Brook, which moving forward, with following their log post to the next destination, they end up bumping into the Red Line, searching for some clues to get to Fishman Island. This is when this one sea rabbit attacks them, and upon defeating it, spitting out a mermaid and her pet starfish, who soon after introduces themselves as Cammy and Papag, which shortly after their arrival, this is when Cammy gets a call from her boy Hachan. However, finds herself talking to Marco of the Marco Pirates, learning that they've teamed up with the Flying Fish Riders, and that they kidnapped Hachan, leaving her in distress. And with Marco hanging up, Cammy then requests that the Straw Hats help save her friend in exchange of getting instructions to Fishman Island. Upon accepting this agreement, Cammy points at the location where Hachan is being held, and as they sail towards it, Papag goes on explaining the human trade business and how it's rapidly growing in Baratie Archipelago, with mermaids being highly valued, which kind of makes Cammy a big target. And so moving forward, they manage to arrive at the Flying Fish Riders hideout, where they happen to spot Hachan in a cage. And with the Straw Hats recognizing him from the Arlong Pirates, they refuse to save him, but with Cammy sacrificing herself, Nami's then like, alright, let's save Hachan. He seems harmless now. And so with going through with the rescue mission, they manage to save the both of them, finding out that the leader of the Flying Fish Riders, Duval, resembles the image on Sanji's bounty, which has pretty much ruined his life, and making it his life goal to get revenge on him. And so as Duval is rushing towards Luffy on his bull, this is where Luffy stares into the bull's soul and knocking it out with some unknown force. And who knows, this may just possibly be foreshadow. But with successfully rescuing Hachan, here's when the Straw Hats decide to wrap things up, blasting the Flying Fish Riders with the Sunny's cannon, eliminating all of them. And Sanji out here does the honors of stomping the fuck out of Duval's face, because it was just too ugly for him. Afterwards, the Straw Hats, Cammy, Papag, and Hachan all then set sail towards Baratie Archipelago, as that is the first stepping stone to getting to Fishman Island, which on their way there, while enjoying some of Hachan's god-tier takoyaki, they get a visit by the Flying Fish Riders once again, but this time around they seem very friendly, with Duval thanking Sanji for rearranging his face just like that one Squidward episode. Following that, Duval then gives his number to the Straw Hats for if they ever need help, before heading off with this newly reformed group called the Rosy Life Riders. And so moving forward, as they're getting closer to Baratie, Papag and Cammy go on explaining the two known routes to get into the second half of the Grand Line, the New World. The first one being through Mary's Raw, on the top of the Red Line, which is the capital of the royal government, but since they're pirates, pirates, I don't think they're allowed. Which leads them to the second method, which is through the ocean floor passage at the bottom of the red line, which leads directly to Fishman Island. And since it's located 10,000 meters underwater, they'll need a special coat on their ship to withstand the water pressure. And so upon their arrival at Sabaody, which is looking rather bubbly, we got the majority of the Straw Hats heading out, while Usopp, Sanji, and Frankie stay back to watch the Sunny. And so with now being here, Hachan then goes on to explain the reason for bringing them here, which is to find this one very skilled coding craftsman named Rayleigh. Also following up warning the Straw Hats about the world nobles on the island, also known as Celestial Dragons, who are descendants of the creators of the world government, and urges them not to engage with them. And so moving forward, we now get the Straw Hats splitting up a little here, with Nami and Robin doing a little shopping, Zoro going on a nice little walk on his own, while Luffy, Brook, Chopper, Cammy, Patpag, and Hachan head out to do business to find Rayleigh, with the first destination being Shaki's ripoff bar, where they are then greeted by Shaki. Surprisingly. And apparently she's the wife of Rayleigh, and through their short interaction with her, she explains that Luffy and Zoro are part of the group of pirates called the Worst Generation, which are rookie pirates that happen to have bounties exceeding 100 million berries, with Luffy's being the second highest, next to a pirate that goes by the name of Kid, who's ranked number 1. And so moving forward, with Rayleigh not being here, they then head out of the bar, saying their goodbyes to Shaki, and continuing their search. However, somewhere in the middle of it, they manage to get distracted by the Sabaody Park, where Cammy happens to get kidnapped. And upon notifying the entire crew about it, Sanji resorts to calling the Rosy Life Riders for assistance, and using their boatmobiles to get around Sabaody, and to search for leads to Cammy's whereabouts. And so moving forward, with the help of the Rosy Life Riders, they manage to locate and pick up all of the Straw Hats all around Sabaody, giving them some transport, where Usopp soon after happens to gather information about Cammy, and that she's being sold off at an auction house at Grove number 1. And with notifying the whole crew about it, the first ones to make it there are Sanji, Nami, Chopper, Frankie, and Hachan, finding all these nobles, indulging in some bidding, where soon after Cammy gets presented and sold off to this very handsome celestial dragon for 500 million berries. But here's when the main character pulls up alongside Zoro, making his way down the aisle to get Cammy back real quick, but Hachan is like, no, and goddamn, he ends up getting shot by the same dude who bought Cammy, and even had the audacity to Fortnite dance on him, which has Luffy livid, walking up to him in a very casual and very angry manner, turning the celestial dragon's face inside out with one of the meanest right hooks I've ever seen in anime, sending him across the map, not giving a single fuck about his status. Which then following that, here's when an all-out war breaks out between the guards and the Straw Hats, where soon after Robin, Brook, and Usopp arrive to join in on the fun, while Kid and Law's crew are just chilling in the back, spectating the whole thing. And so in the midst of all this chaos, here's when this one other celestial dragon targets Cammy, seeing that she's seemingly important to the Straw Hats. However, right before she was able to pull the trigger, she gets KO'd by some unknown force produced by Rayleigh, who was in the back imprisoned by choice for his own reasons. And so following KOing this one celestial dragon, he then proceeds to KO the rest of the guards in the auction, which Hachan then goes on explaining that this force he's producing is actually something called Haki, which allows the user to utilize their own spiritual energy for various purposes, and was also the very thing that Luffy took out that bull with way back when. And so with all the guards wiped out, Rayleigh then helps Cammy escape, freeing her from her explosive collar, and here's when the whole auction house gets surrounded by the Popo, aka the Marines, which has the Worst Generations, Luffy, Kid, and Law heading out to handle business, flexing their devil fruit abilities on them, and after talking a little shit with one another, here's when the Rosy Life Riders arrive, picking the Straw Hats up to flee the area, bringing Cammy and Rayleigh along. Following their escape, they make their way back to Shaki's bar, where it's revealed that Rayleigh was actually the vice captain of the Roger Pirates, which is the reason why this man is just built different. Following that, Rayleigh then reveals that Goldie Roger wasn't actually captured by the royal government, and actually turned himself in after catching a fatal illness, and was like, well, if I'm gonna die, I guess I'll die a legend in my hometown, Loguetown. So after explaining all that, Rayleigh is then like, alright, enough story time, time to code that damn ship. But here's when Robin questions him about the Void Century, as well as the Will of D, which has Rayleigh responding like, oh, you mean the Will of D's nuts? Did I just make a D's nuts joke in 2023? But anyways, with asking about the Void Century, Rayleigh is then like, you know I was with the King of the Pirates, right? And I could just spoil everything right here and now. But Robin's like, never mind, I'm good. On which Usopp then pops up asking about the One Piece, which has Luffy going like, shut the fuck up! Don't spoil the ending! And so with that, the Straw Hats head out of the bar, with Rayleigh giving each of them a Vivi card, telling them to return to him in 3 days, and their ship should be ready and coded by then. And so with the Straw Hats now parting ways with Rayleigh, here's when they come in contact with the Pacifista, which are practically cyborg military clones of Kuma, created by the world government. And after struggling against it for quite a bit, they managed to defeat this one bot, exerting quite a hefty amount of energy. However, unfortunately for them, it doesn't stop here, with Sentomaru, the commander of the Marine Science Unit, arriving with another Pacifista, which has the Straw Hats going like, oh shit, we're fucked. Splitting up into 3 individual groups, with Sanji's group getting intercepted by the Pacifista, Luffy's group getting intercepted by Sentomaru, and Zoro's getting intercepted by the Admiral Kizaru, who recently arrived on the island after being notified about the naughty pirates over here. And so with the Straw Hats in this dilemma, here's when the legend himself Rayleigh comes in clutch, holding up Kizaru for them, and this is when Luffy orders his whole crew to book it, because they're just too low leveled for this shit. However, here's when the real deal Kuma appears on the battlefield, taking off his gloves, and one by one, making each of Luffy's crew members disappear before his eyes, which has Luffy going like, surely this is just a bad dream, right? But with Robin being the last one that Kuma targets, Luffy then desperately reaches out to save her, but as a very fast man once said, you're too slow. And so with his whole entire crew wiped out and erased from existence, here's when Kuma's like, you done crying? Before banishing Luffy into the Shadow Realm to join his friends. And damn, what now? We just lost all our main characters. But oh, would you look at that? Luffy is over here flying through the sky, having him come to the conclusion that his crewmates didn't actually disappear and have been propelled into the sky just like him, which after all this thinking, this causes him to get hungry and pass out. And so moving forward, following Luffy's very long flight, he finally plops down at his destination, Amazon Lily. But right off the bat, he goes and hunts for some food, where he then encounters these shrooms and is like, yo, these seem edible. And upon consuming them, this causes him to absolutely black out, Zoro, but soon after the residents living here find him, bringing him back to their town to treat him. However, upon further inspection, they find that Luffy is of the opposite sex, after yanking on his Gumma Gumma no Pee-Pee, which brings massive shock to all of them, because this island is strictly inhabited by the female warrior tribe known as the Kuja, making this the first male they ever seen in the flesh after playing with his flesh. Wait, what? But upon being captured by the Kuja, Luffy is then put into this one cell, which is then like, yep, I'm out, making his grand escape and grabbing one of the members in the process before heading off into this one forest area. Here they then have a nice little conversation, bringing up the topic of pirates, which Marguerite brings up that the empress of this island is also a pirate like Luffy, known as the Snake Princess and Pirate Empress, Boa Hancock, which following her explaining all that, Luffy then asks her if he could borrow a ship so he can get off this island and find his crewmates. But Marguerite gives him the news that this island is located on the Calm Belt, which is known to inhabiting giant sea kings, and the only possible way off this island is through the use of Hancock's ship specialized for this environment. Which now cutting over to Hancock, we got her and her crew returning to Amazon Lily, where she is then approached by some marines, and with her being one of the warlords of the sea, she is then informed about Ace's execution that is scheduled to happen and has been summoned to partake in the potential war against Whitebeard. And if she declines, they'll strip her from her warlord status and will void their treaty between the Kuja and the world government, which he says fuck that shit, making all the marines fall for her and using her love fruit, turning all the marines into stone, aside from Vice Admiral Momonga, who has chronic post-nut clarity. And so moving forward, as Luffy searches around for someone who can lend him a ship, here's when Luffy falls straight down into the bathhouse that Hancock's in, due to unfortunately having the main character cliche curse, and upon getting a glimpse of her back, he spots a mark on which he somewhat recognizes. But here's when Hancock's sisters come in, trying to exterminate Luffy for viewing the forbidden mark on her back, and in the process of Hancock trying to seduce Luffy so she could turn him into stone, it seems it's ineffective against him due to him having an immunity to waifus. And so in the process of Luffy trying to escape the situation, he still manages to get caught and brought to the arena for a public execution. But before it begins, here are one of the girls that helps Luffy onto the island appear, confessing to their sins and begging on their knees for Hancock's forgiveness, but it seems their talk no juicy was just not strong enough and get their asses turned into stone statues, which results in Luffy getting very angry, taking on this one large panther, telling them to get the sorry shit out of his face, and with Hancock's devil fruit being ineffective on Luffy, she then sends out two of her sisters onto the battlefield, transforming into two snakes with breasticles, and in the process of them trying to execute a team attack on Luffy, one of the sisters catches the other one on fire, burning her clothes, and revealing the mark on her back, identical to Hancock's. But here's when Luffy jumps on top of it, saving it from being exposed, telling her that he's got her back. What am I even doing with my life? Afterwards, Hancock then orders everyone in the stadium to evacuate, warning them that if they look at her sister's back, they'll be turned into stone. And so with the stadium now cleared, Luffy then turns over to Hancock like, you my next opponent or what? Followed up with requesting that she returns his Kuja friends back to normal. And so here's when Hancock decides to hit Luffy up with an ultimatum, giving him a choice between using her ship to escape the island or saving the girls that were turned into statues. And without hesitation, Luffy goes with the girls, having everyone all shocked at the fact that a man could be this selfless. And so moving forward, following saving the girls, Hancock then brings Luffy back to her palace, showing off her mark to him since he previously mentioned that he recognized it. And upon looking deeply into it, he tells her that it's a bit different to the mark he saw on his buddy Hotshot. And so with that, here's when Elder Nyan enters the room, revealing to Hancock about Luffy's assault on the Celestial Dragon. And with hearing this, she then gets emotional at the fact that people are actually putting their lives on the line to challenge the Celestial Dragons, instantly gaining the trust of Luffy. Following this, Hancock then reveals to Luffy, like his friend Hotshot, the mark on her and her sister's back is the emblem of the Celestial Dragons, and they managed to brand every one of the slaves with it to mark their property. And so following this, she then decides to go over her life story, talking about how her and her sisters were sold off in an auction and for 4 years endured nothing but pain. However, by some miracle, an adventurer by the name of Fisher Tiger came around one night, freeing all the slaves from the Holy Land Marie-Joie, which includes Hancock and her sisters, by the way. And so with Tiger making an enemy out of the world government, he then forms a crew called the Sun Pirates, which mostly consisted of former fishermen slaves. And as a way to liberate them from their quote-unquote curse, every one of the members on the crew had the Celestial Dragon emblems branded over, giving them a new start. And so following Hancock's story, she then asks Luffy if he now looks down on her for being a former slave, on which he's like, are you on crack? I don't give a fuck. Followed up with telling her that he hates these Celestial Dragons too. And with hearing this response, this has Hancock opening her eyes like, oh my god, I fucking love you. Have my babies. Have my ship and take it anywhere you want. Which has Luffy going like, hot diggity dog. And so moving forward, after guzzling down some food down his throat, here's when Luffy meets up with Elder Nyan, where he learns that Hancock is one of the 7 warlords and has been summoned to participate in the potential war against Whitebeard, with Ace scheduled to being publicly executed, which has Luffy sipping his tea over here like, wait, hold up, I think that's my brother. Elder Nyan then follows up with telling him that the pirate Blackbeard has been promoted to being one of the warlords, following defeating and turning in Ace himself. And if Luffy wishes to save his brother, she tells him that he has 6 days from today to rescue him before he's cooked. And with the journey from here to Sabaody projected to take in longer than a week, which by the way is the meetup spot that the Straw Hats agreed upon, here's when Luffy does some complex math and figures out that he has no time to regroup with his crew and will have to head directly to Impel Down, where Ace is being held, in hopes of saving him, which Elder Nyan informs him that by marine ship, he'll be able to reach there in 4 days with the cheeky little shortcut they use. And the only viable way to get on one is to convince Hancock to accept the summons that she previously declined. And so upon arriving at the palace, they find Hancock dying over here from a sickness, but gets up unfazed the second Luffy asks her a favor. And upon hearing Luffy out about boarding a marine ship, Hancock is like, sure, anything for you, honey, which Elder Nyan realizes that she's been diagnosed with love sickness, the deadliest one of them all. And so with Hancock agreeing to get Luffy on a marine ship, here's where we have her saying her goodbyes to the Kuja, returning back to Vice Admiral Momonga and taking back what she said, agreeing to come along to Impel Down, which has him questioning what changed their mind. But with the classic tsundere response, she manages to get through with Luffy hiding underneath her clothing. And yeah, with that, we now have them setting sail to rescue Ace, which now cutting over to the other Straw Hats whereabouts, cause we can't forget about them. We got Nami over here getting sent over to the Sky Island with Ria, learning more about the science of clouds. Frankie over here on a snowy island called Katakuri Island, specialized in advanced technology. Chopper in the Torino Kingdom with a bunch of animals and information about medical history. Sanji at Momoiro Island getting chased by these absolute beauties. Robin at Tequila Wolf with this one very epic bridge. Brook at Nakakura Island, which is a whole ass island ran by a cult. Usopp at Boyne Archipelago, where he bonds with this one other character who happens to be on the island as well. And Zoro at the Kuragana Island, where Piranha was also sent to way back when. And this is where Zoro manages to receive some mentorship from the warlord himself, Mihawk, because apparently this is where he lives. And how have I not mentioned that he was a warlord yet, when he was literally the first one we ever saw? God, I suck at writing scripts. But anyways, with all that said, they all then get their little training arcs on their specified individual islands, where they all happen to have their handy dandy Vivi card with them for when the time comes when they all reunite back at Sabaody. And so moving forward, now cutting back over to Luffy and Hancock, they manage to make their way to Impel Down, where Hancock is required to undergo a pat down, with a guard wanting to get a little kinky with it. However, with some very clutch efforts, Luffy manages to get through undetected, giving his thanks to Hancock, making her bust before heading down level 1 of Impel Down, using Ace's Vivi card as guidance. And with him casually making his way through level 1, here's when he then encounters Buggy, going like long time no see, then asking him if he could lead him to Ace. And with Buggy noticing that Luffy has a piece of treasure that he's been searching for his whole life, he then agrees to guide him in return of gaining possession of it. And so as they make their way towards the entrance of level 2, here's when Buggy explains the levels to Luffy, telling him the lower they go, the more severe the criminals get, and that Ace is said to be placed at the very bottom, where the most heinous ones are at. He then follows up with telling Luffy that he's only able to bring him down to level 4, as that is the furthest he has ever gone. And so with them getting through level 1's Crimson Hell, here's when they find this one Mario pipe, on which leads directly down to level 2. And with both of them falling straight down into it, they successfully make it to level 2, freeing some prisoners in the process, with Goldino being one of them, previously known as Mr. 3. And what are the Straws doing back at the Sunny? Oh wait, this is just a filler arc. But now cutting over to Ace's cell, here's where we find out that he's been put in a cell with the former warlord Jinbei, who was imprisoned due to being the only warlord who refused the summons to stand against Whitebeard, and says that he's willing to give up anything to prevent this war from happening, as a way to repay Whitebeard, who saved his hometown Fishman Island way back when. And so now cutting over back to Luffy's little group, we now have them fighting through level 2, where they end up bumping into this one creature, shattering the ground beneath them, and dragging them all straight down to level 3. Out here speedrunning in this bitch. And with them landing in the beautiful heat of level 3, they end up bumping into some guards, which as Luffy handles them, here's when Buggy and Goldino sneak away from Luffy, ditching him so they can try to escape the prison together, which has Luffy going like, whoop, I don't give a shit, but thanks for the help though. And so as he makes his way through some more guards, here's when he encounters Bon Clay, who was recently freed by Goldino, and with having a common interest, he tags along with Luffy with the goal to search for a prisoner here named Ivankov. And so with Luffy's infiltration on Impel Down, here's when the chief warden Magellan gets word of his entry and sends his forces to gather at level 4 to cut him off. And so as Luffy and Bon Clay are finding their way through level 3, they manage to find the pit that leads down to level 4, and just as they reach here, this is when Buggy and Goldino make a reappearance, getting chased by this one jailer beast, but with the power of teamwork, they manage to pull through, clapping it, which results in the floor below them crumbling into pieces, forcing them all down to level 4, when Magellan and his troops are already posted up, defending both of the exits here. And so with Luffy and Bon Clay heading one way, they end up encountering the big daddy himself, Magellan, which Bon Clay warns Luffy about the dangers of his venom, and retreats alone because Luffy loves being hard-headed, and is like, I don't give a fuck, landing a solid hit on Magellan, which has him going like, God damn, this shit hurt. And so as the fight progresses, Luffy ends up getting more and more poison in his system from physical contact, to the point where, I guess he dies here. Meanwhile, cutting over to Goldino and Buggy's POV, they arrive at the gate which leads back up to level 3. However, find it being guarded by Vice Warden Hannibal and his squad, which leads to them getting captured as a result. However, just as they were gonna get taken away, Bon Clay arrives at the scene, taking on Hannibal in a 1v1, and somewhere in between, manages to outplay him by transforming into Nami and using her personality to lure him into a cheeky little ambush, which after tying his ass up, he then takes his form, and using Buggy and Goldino as leverage, Bon Clay then goes on a rescue mission to save his pal Luffy, coming up with the plan to bring him to Ivankov, who is known to being a miracle worker. But first, he has to find Luffy. And so with dragging Buggy and Goldino along, he brings them down to level 5, playing the role as Vice Warden, and upon entering this level, he then sets the both of them free, as he now searches for Luffy, which fast forwarding a little, he manages to find him in this one cell, freeing him, and now continues his search for Ivankov. But it seems the search is cut short here, with him getting surrounded by wolves, but this is when Luffy gets up with sheer willpower, knocking them all out with the use of Haki, before passing out alongside Bon Clay, which soon after, this one mysterious person pulls upon them named Inazuma, bringing them both to safety. And so moving forward, we now got Bon Clay waking up in this one new place, where he just finds a bunch of people partying, and right before his eyes, he sees Ivankov performing on stage, welcoming Bon Clay to level 5.5 of Impel Down, which is the secret hub for escaped prisoners, located in between levels 5 and 6, with level 6 established to being the lowest. And so as Ivankov is performing, here's when this one dude just pulls up with a whole ass cannon, acting foolish out here, giving Ivankov the opportunity to flex his abilities real quick with his explosive winks and the ability to manipulate hormones, transforming this one dude into a woman. Following this, Bon Clay then takes this moment to beg Ivankov to save his friend Luffy, but Ivankov is like, I'm already on it, bringing Bon Clay to the room where Luffy is being held after receiving his hormone-based treatment that will unfortunately cost him 10 years off his lifespan if he survives it, which there's a 3% chance. And oh shit, would you look at that, it seems Luffy manages to survive, despite the odds. Wow, which we now have him guzzling down some food, looking like Squidward out here in that one Krabby Patty episode, and with making a full recovery, Luffy then gets updated about his location, which he then asks his Ivankov for guidance to get to Ace. And upon finding out that Luffy is the son of Monkey D. Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, this blows Ivankov away because it's revealed that Ivankov is one of the commanders of the Revolutionary Army and is actually close friends with Dragon. And so with this being his son, Ivankov hastily decides to help Luffy, heading straight to the stairway which leads to level 6, taking care of some guards on the way. And with them arriving at level 6, at Ace's cell, Jinbei is over here in the cell like, ooh, you just missed him. And it seems Ace is now currently being transferred to the Marine headquarters, Marineford, for his execution. And so following getting this news, this is when Impel Down security puts the whole level on lockdown, disabling the elevator, as well as blocking off the flight of stairs they took to get here, giving them no means of escaping. But this is when Crocodile in one of the cells goes like, yoo-hoo! You know I can get you all out of here by creating a hole in the ceiling, right? And with Luffy reluctant with the idea of freeing Crocodile, Ivankov offers to keep him in check by blackmailing him with the weakness he knows. And this is when Jinbei over here is like, yo, get me too! And so with freeing Jinbei and Crocodile, they then all head upwards, pushing forward to escape Impel Down, and somewhere in the process, freeing Daz, formerly known as Mr. 1, cause why not? And as they are all making their way to the stairway which leads to level 3, they are then cut off by Hannibal, on which Luffy then has a very intense 1v1 with him, absolutely pounding that ass, which soon after Blackbeard makes his appearance, as he's just casually strolling down Impel Down, getting Hannibal out of the way real quick, with no respect. And this is when Luffy discovers that Blackbeard was actually that one person he met back on Jaya, and with recalling that Blackbeard was actually the one responsible for Ace's capture, this has him fuming, throwing a very solid punch at him, ready to go crazy. However, is this stopped by Jinbei, reminding him of the mission at hand, and despite him wanting to finish the fight, Luffy gets his priorities straight, heading straight towards level 3. So as Luffy and his allies are making their way up to level 2, this is when Magellan makes his appearance once again, going after them, wondering how the fuck Luffy survived his poison, which as he makes his way towards Luffy, he ends up encountering Ivankov along with Inazuma, here to hold him off. And so with them doing that, Luffy progresses up Impel Down, reuniting with Buggy and Goldina along the way, and oh dear, seems Magellan catches up to all of them. God damn it, you guys had one job! And so as Luffy and the others are dealing with Magellan, here's when we got Jinbei along with a handful of others, making their way to the main entrance, opening the gates to freedom. However, find out real quick that the Marines have moved all the ships away from the prison, giving them no way out, which then Jinbei gets to brain blast, ripping off one of the doors and using it as a raft to get to the ships in the distance, bringing Buggy, Crocodile, and Daz along. And upon traveling to the ships and rolling some Marines in the process, they managed to successfully secure a ship for their escape. And so now cutting over back to Luffy's POV, we got Magellan deciding to go tryhard mode, unleashing its final form, and having everyone run for their lives towards the main entrance. But soon after Ivankov and Inazuma make their appearance, after failing us, and Jinbei communicating to Luffy to have everyone jump into the water so they could be brought to safety. And since he's a friend of Ace, he trusts him, instructing everyone to board Ivankov's big ass head. And so with everyone clenching their cheeks as Magellan is slowly closing in on them, Ivankov pulls off a clutch wink, launching everyone towards the water, where Jinbei then summons a bunch of whale sharks to bring them all towards the marine ship. And so with doing that, it seems everyone is all safe, but not really, because they end up getting shot at by a fleet of Marines. And it seems the gates of justice is closed off as well, giving them no way to escape. But would you look at that, by some miracle it opens up, giving them a chansu. And this was because Bon Clay actually stayed back to open the gates for them, really taking one for the team like a legend. And with Luffy coming to the realization that it was him, he calls him like, bro, you didn't have to do this, man, thanking him before Bon Clay delivers his last words to him, telling Luffy to save his brother at any cost. And with the gates shutting here, this cuts off the signal between their transponder snails, having everyone just crying over here, except Jinbei, and this one dude regretting his whole entire life. But anyways, with Luffy now making his way towards Marineford, we now got Ace being placed in the main stage in front of the whole world to see in 144p for his execution, where Fleet Admiral Sengoku reveals that Ace is indeed Goldie Roger's son, which shocks the whole world, and I guess you could say like father like son. But with his real father being mentioned, Ace rejects him, claiming that Whitebeard is his only father, which we then have Garp over here thinking about this one flashback with Ace's mother holding Ace in the womb for 20 months in order to deceive the Marines that Roger's bloodline has ended. And upon giving birth to Ace, this exhausts her to death, but before she passed, she entrusts Ace in Garp's care, on which he then brings him to his good friend Dodon back at Don Island, on which is also the same place he brings Luffy a few years after. And so now cutting back to the present, with Ace's execution being prepared, here's when a bunch of ships infiltrate the base, where soon after Whitebeard's ship makes an appearance called the Moby Dick, with Whitebeard himself stepping out, telling Ace, I got you, bro, shattering the air around him, and with his devil fruit ability, creating catastrophic damage with his quakes, which results in some tsunamis forming in the process, and I swear something's off here. But anyways, with the tsunamis coming in, here's when Aokiji steps in, freezing the water from crashing in, and I guess this is where we just have an all-out war between the Marines and Whitebeard's allies, where we soon after have Little Oars Jr. arriving on the battlefield on the side of Whitebeard, who's actually the descendant of that one zombie that Luffy's shadow was put into back on Thriller Bark. And oh shit, it seems he ends up getting rolled here and collapsing, which as all of this is happening, we got Whitebeard over here just standing in the back, staring menacingly at the battlefield because he's motherfucking Whitebeard. And so moving forward, with all of this combat going on, this is when Luffy and the Impel Down prisoners arrive, raining from the sky, on which we then have Luffy yelling out Ace's name, with Ace yelling back Luffy's on some Naruto and Sasuke shit, and with that, Luffy is then like, it's go time, coming in contact with Whitebeard, making an agreement with one another not to get in each other's way. And so after hitting the fattest squad, Luffy then proceeds to head into the battlefield, with Jinbei and Ivankov accompanying him. And so moving slightly forward, as they are making their way to Ace, they come in contact with Moria and Kuma, who believe it or not is one of the founding members of the Revolutionary Army, and with them making their appearance, Jinbei then goes on taking on Moria as Ivankov takes on Kuma, noticing that he's acting a bit different, on which the warlord himself, Doflamingo, appears, revealing that he's no longer himself, himself and has been completely transformed into a human weapon of destruction for the world government, which has even Cobb going like, Nani? And so as Luffy pushes through some more of the forces, he then gets into a little bit of a pickle against Smoker. However, this is when Hancock pulls up, saving him, as well as giving him the key to Ace's cuffs. And so with that, Luffy then progresses further towards Ace, as the war intensifies, with Whitebeard getting stabbed by one of his crewmates, named fucking Squard, telling Whitebeard that he knows his plot on sacrificing all his allies in order to save Ace, revealing that he got this information from Admiral Akainu, which has Whitebeard going like, you shithead, how could you fall for something like that? And with being accused for such a thing, Whitebeard then shatters all the ice walls surrounding them, allowing his allies the choice to leave if they want, but they're all like, we're with you, daddy, all very much loyal to him, which has Squad reconsidering like, wait, did I fuck up? And with Whitebeard now injured, he then decides to join the battlefield, because with his handicap, he now feels like the battle's a little bit more balanced. And so following his participation, this is when a bunch of pacifists spawn on the battlefield, being led by Sentamaru, destroying every pirate ship in sight, along with every pirate. But now cutting back over to Luffy, here's when the Marines activate the walls, blocking off access to the execution platform. But would you look at that, Little Oris Jr.'s body obstructs one of them from going up, having Luffy and the allied pirates charge towards the opening, and oh god, it seems everyone just gets rolled in the process, Luffy included. But just then, here's when Jinbei comes in clutch, yeeting Luffy over the walls into the Marineford Plaza, where he then comes face to face with 3 admirals. And god damn, it seems he gets absolutely rolled by Kizaru. Which soon after, he then got Whitebeard and his forces making it into the plaza, with Whitebeard catching a very injured Luffy, leaving him in other people's care, cause he don't got time for this shit. Now going up against Akainu, where they both display power levels above the gods. And so now cutting back over to Luffy, here's when he gets revived by Ivankov once again, after desperately begging him to squirt his hormones into him, which will probably result in him losing an additional 20 years off his lifespan, but I guess that's a small price to pay. And so following that, we then got Luffy up and well, making his way towards Ace once again, where Kobe appears in front of him like, hey Luffy, you remember me? Which has Luffy going like, get your bitch ass out of my face. And so now cutting back over to Whitebeard, it seems like Yagami has gotten to him, with his aging physical condition catching up to him, and with seeing the state that Whitebeard's in, Akainu is then like, well, I guess I gotta take advantage of the situation and fist you real quick, which then Sengoku orders all of his subordinates to jump Whitebeard, stabbing his balls and titties. However, of course, that wasn't enough to stop the legend, as he proceeds to carry on to save his son Ace. But oh god, it seems he's gonna get executed. But just as the blades are closing in on Ace, here's when Luffy releases a roar of haki that could be felt all across Marineford, knocking out many of the Marine minions in the area, and stopping the execution as a result. And pretty much with all the minions dealt with here, Luffy then makes his way to the execution platform, with Whitebeard ordering his whole crew to back him up. And so as Luffy closes in on the platform, here's when Inazuma appears, creating a nice bridge for him to get up to it, which on his way up, here's when Garp cuts him off like, if you want to get through, you have to kill me first. And I mean, they go way back, and there's no way Luffy would, oh shit, how could you hit Grandpapa like that? But anyways, with Luffy successfully making it to Ace, he then pulls out the key to his cuffs, on which unfortunately gets sniped by Kizaru, splitting it into 2. But just as this happens, here's when Godino arrives, who disguised himself as an executioner, and with him making an appearance, here's when Sengoku pulls up on them in his giant Buddha form, attempting to Hulk smash Luffy, resulting in the entire platform crumbling underneath them. However, in the midst of this fall, Godino manages to clutch up, creating a wax key for Ace, and at long last, he's finally free, which has everyone out here celebrating, and Whitebeard ordering everyone to escape this island at any cost, intending to hold off the entire opposition on his own so they could do so. Which this is when Ace gives his deepest and sincerest thanks to Whitebeard for everything, before retreating with the rest. And as he's escaping, here's when Akainu decides to pull up to talk some shit, calling Whitebeard a loser, which has Ace going like, yo bro, too far, you can't be talking about daddy like that. Which they then proceed to clash with one another, having Ace taking a massive L. Which shortly after, here's when Akainu decides to switch targets to Luffy, who is distracted by his Vivi card, which has Ace jumping in, shielding him from the attack, getting turned into a whole ass donut, and this all could have been avoided if Ace didn't fall for the bait. How very silly of him. And so with Ace taking a massive L here, you have everyone around like, damn, to think Ace threw all our efforts out the window like that. Which with Ace in Luffy's arms, he then apologizes to Luffy for having him go through the trouble of saving him, followed up with giving a farewell speech, thanking everyone for caring about someone like him, and telling Luffy that he believes in him and achieving his goals, before passing away with a cheeky little smile on his face, having Garp over here like, god damn it, you could have been a Marine just like me. And everyone around is like, damn, while Luffy is left over here in this absolutely destroyed state. And as 2017 Mo once said, and so with Luffy out of commission for the sheer trauma, here's when Jinbei grabs him and dips, while Whitebeard pulls up on Akainu, making him feel real uncomfortable and turning his head into a pancake. However, it seems that attack wasn't enough, with Akainu getting right back up, fisting Whitebeard through the torso and melting his guts. So I guess you could say like father like son, huh? What is wrong with me? But anyways, following that, Whitebeard recovers from the attack almost unfazed, where he then soon after answers back with his own juicy attack, destroying Akainu along with the entirety of Marineford, cause he's him. Soon after that, here's when the Blackbeard pirates arrive, with Whitebeard determined to avenge his 2 sons, attempting to take out Blackbeard himself despite his current state. But like a coward, Blackbeard has his whole crew jump Whitebeard, getting the upper hand on him, and as he's dying, he then mentions a treasure, assuring that someone will find it, and once that happens, the whole world will turn upside down, which he then follows up, taking a deep inhale, announcing to the world, here we go, the One Piece! The One Piece is real! I'm sure my neighbors didn't hear that. But anyways, following uttering these words, his final words, with Whitebeard's body just standing there, the Blackbeard pirates then put over a black curtain over his corpse, where Blackbeard goes under it to suck his cock or something, and upon getting out, it seems that he has sucked Whitebeard dry from his Tremor fruit abilities, now being able to use it while still retaining his dark fruit abilities, which I think that's kind of OP. And so now cutting over back to Luffy, with the help of his allies, they managed to push through all the way to the docks, where then a submarine comes up from the water, being manned by the Heart Pirates, where Law comes out saying, yo, I'm a doctor, and that he can help Luffy despite him being a potential threat in the future. However, with giving him the medical treatment that he needs, he seeks a promising opportunity with Luffy that aligns with his goals. And with that said, with the help of Buggy, Luffy and Jinbei manage to make it over to the submarine, where they make a nice and smooth escape. Which soon after, back at Marineford, here's when Shanks makes his appearance, announcing that he's putting an end to this war, saying that he'll happily take anyone on who still wants to fight. And with everyone scared of him for some reason, this has everyone disarming, and even Blackbeard over here retreats, despite him dual-wielding devil fruits. And so following that, Shanks then orders the Marines to do as he says, and to allow a proper burial for both Whitebeard and Ace, which Sengoku agrees to do, because Shanks got the bigger dick. And so with that agreement, the Summit War of Marineford is officially over, with the Marines doing their victory screech. Moving forward, as Luffy and Jinbei are traveling on this one submarine, here's when Hancock pulls up along with some other Impel Down prisoners on a stolen Marine battleship, where Hancock proposes that they bring Luffy to Amazon Lily for his own safety from the world government. And with that said, they follow through, making their way back to Amazon Lily, where Luffy wakes up going berserk, yelling for Ace, causing mass destruction left and right, which has Jinbei going like, Luffy, your bro's gone, which eventually starts sinking in for Luffy, bringing us to this one flashback of his childhood, with him and his foster family, the Dodon family, at Dawn Island, where he meets Ace and eventually this one kid named Sabo, who reveals to them that he is indeed a noble, but resents the lifestyle so much that he decided to run away from home, which after some time, all three of them form a very close bond, becoming brothers, which moving forward in this flashback, Sabo happens to get caught by his father and dragged back home, which brings him to the conclusion that he can never be free if he stays here in the Goa Kingdom, and decides to leave the island on his little boat. However, on his way out, he comes face to face with this one celestial dragon ship that fires at him for fun, and oh god, I don't think he survived that. And so following this, Luffy and Ace happen to get the news about Sabo's death, leaving them in absolute despair, which the following morning, here's when a letter from Sabo comes in, addressed to Ace, telling him to take care of Luffy, which following that, Ace and Luffy then get together, where Ace discusses about sailing the seas and becoming a pirate, which after a nice 7-year training arc, Ace reaches the age of 17, setting sail to fulfill his dreams, and fast forwarding 3 more years, Luffy reaches the age of 17, and like Ace, heads out becoming a pirate, saying his goodbyes to Dodon and the people of Dawn Island, which on his way out, Luffy manages to avenge Shanks' arm, clapping that one sea monster that ate it, and man do they just grow up too fast. And you see the reason why Luffy and Ace left at the age of 17 is because Sabo previously mentioned at the age of 18, that's the age he would officially become a noble, and to defy that fate, he intended on sailing a year before that happened. And so with Ace and Luffy doing this, it's kind of poetic in that matter. And so now cutting back to the present, we still got Luffy agonizing over here, doubting himself on becoming the king of pirates, as well as beating himself up over Ace's death, which has Jinbei going like, yo, get your shit together. Followed up with telling Luffy what's lost is lost, and to look at what he has, which has Luffy going like, shit, you right, I got my Nakama, and now forms the new resolve to meet up with them. Moving forward, we now have Rayleigh arriving on Amazon Lily to meet up with Luffy, explaining how Kuma was the one who told them that Luffy would be here, and with Luffy being too weak to return to Sabaody as he is, Rayleigh then offers to train him to be built like a main character, and not just the main character. But Luffy is like, hold up, let me do something real quick, heading all the way back to Marineford to pay his respects to Ace, and relaying a message to the other Straw Hats via newspaper to meet up at Sabaody in 2 years, which moving forward past that, Jinbei then leaves Luffy with Rayleigh, intending to meet up with him again in 2 years at Fishman Island. And with Luffy undergoing his training arc, Rayleigh then brings Luffy to this abandoned island called Usakaina, going over everything Haki and explaining the core concept of it, revealing that it's super effective against Logia Devil Fruit users, and that there's 3 different types of Haki, which running down the list, we got Observation Haki, which grants the user a 6th sense, Armament Haki, which grants the user strong armored protection, and Conqueror's Haki, which is the rarest of them all, and literally the only one you have to be genetically born with, as 1 in several million people possess this ability, which surprisingly Luffy has it, as well as Rayleigh. And pretty much what Conqueror's Haki allows the user to do is exert their own willpower over their opponents, and essentially mind fucks them, knocking them out. And so yeah, with Luffy starting his training arc, he then puts down his straw hat in this nice and safe spot, which did you know this hat originally belonged to the infamous pirate Goldie Roger? The more you know. And so following the 2-year period, we now got Luffy a brand new stronger man, ready to head back to Sabaody to reunite with his crew, which it seems they all happen to make it over here, dare I say in one piece, and upon meeting up with one another, it seems all their training arcs paid off, with them now all capable of clapping these pacifistas in one shot. And so upon reuniting at the Sunny, it seems they all now set sail towards Fishman Island, thanks to Rayleigh's beautiful job on coding the ship. And low-key, I thought I could make it to the beginning of the Wano arc, as I actually do have it all scripted and everything. However, I'm kind of losing my voice, and it's actually beginning to hurt whenever I do long vowels, so that's pretty cool. Which now brings us to the same situation as Naruto, and you may have to wait for the One Piece Shippuden in minutes, whenever the series wraps up. Whatever that is. And I may have to unfortunately hit you up with the anime classic,